Hello and welcome to another Frenchman Learns About Japan reaction stream, and today we are going to watch and start watching, I guess I should say, the Timeline Japan 1990s series of videos by the great channel Aniki. Some of you who've been around for a bit may remember that on my old channel that was deleted by YouTube, so the Voix des Harlots basically, I reacted to their 1980s series, and it was awesome. I mean, we learned a lot and it was just really interesting. There are videos that are like 30 minutes, but they make you wish they were like 10 hours, right? You know, all this random trivia of interesting things that happened every year. You know, it's mighty interesting. So yeah, they started the 1990s series 3 months ago, and I was waiting for there to be quite a few videos to check out. So we're going to start today. Not sure until what episode we'll watch, we'll see. But yeah, we're gonna learn, as always. Obviously, 80s was really interesting as it was like the peak of the, you know, bubble boom of Japan, just max money. But now we're basically getting into, you know, everything going down quite a bit. So it should be interesting in that way. And obviously it's a different era as well. I mean, Showa finished 89, I think, and now it's gonna be AC. So we'll see what happens, but I'm sure it's going to be interesting. I mean, essay is definitely interesting. So as always, link in the description for the playlist with all the videos by Aniki. Link to my Discord if you want to follow me. My stream element, Patreon, where you can support me. Request reaction, the classic. I will link you in the chat the playlist too. Do check it out. I mean, Aniki is a great channel that makes a lot of great video. I think that's it. Not too much more to say. I mean, again, it's a shame I lost my reaction to the 90s, to the 80s videos. But again, when my old channel was stated for deletion, you know, I just kind of panicked. I didn't know what to say because since I had, you know, literally like 13,000 videos or something, I just, you know, couldn't really think of what to do, and I kind of got frozen by indecision. And yeah, I ended up losing so much, but, you know, who knows, maybe in some years, if I've forgotten the 1980s video, I can rewatch them, yeah. I hope he keeps going with this series, like, you know, maybe next 2000s, 2010s, maybe go back to like 1960s, 70s, I don't know. It's such a fun concept, yeah. Anyway, enough yapping, let's get into the reaction. So, what happened in Japan, 1990? I should put on subtitles. Here we go.
Alright, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The Japanese 1990s.
Let's go.
A brand new decade to explore, and boy are we off to a flyer. To look at Japan in 1990, honestly, kind of like looking at the 1980s 2.0. Morale still at an all-time high. The public radiating optimism. Coming off the back of that legendary 1980s run, everyone was looking forward to yet...
It's true, yeah, because at the beginning of the 90s, I guess they don't realize yet that they are in the terrible descent, yeah.
Another decade of insane growth. The big question on everyone's minds, was this the decade Japan would finally crown itself the world's #1 superpower? Well, not quite. 1990 still packed a serious punch and delivered plenty of highs, but it's also the year we see the first couple of cracks that would eventually turn the decade on its head. Still, we've got a massive year to cover here. This was the year an American giant fell in Tokyo when
That's right, I always forget. Tyson lost for the first time in Tokyo. Who was the guy that beat him? I always forget. Is it Larry Buster Holmes? I think it is.
A new kind of 16-bit power conquered Japanese living rooms, when Japan basically out-Ferrari'd Ferrari. It's the year a new emperor officially took the throne, and the year Japan spent a few billion just to look at some pretty flowers.
Okay.
No, seriously. As for everything else that happened in 1990, the tech, the movies, the weird stories, coming right up. Hey, my name is Aniki, and you're watching Timeline Japan.
Let's go.
1990s.
I'm very hyped.
But before we hit the gas, let me just plug that good old Patreon page real quick. This is where you can get all that timeline goodness, ad-free, starting at just $1 per month, if you want. If not, just clicking on this video, hitting like and subscribing, that helps the channel much more than you know.
That's the best I can do, and that's the best that I will do. As I always say, I used to be like someone who never comments, but you know, when I really started focusing on YouTube, doing videos myself a lot, you kind of realize, yeah, I mean, even one comment, even a simple comment feels good. So I started being that person who just leaves comments on as much as I can, you know. It used to be I did it only when I was on stream like this, so with this account, but now even off stream, you know, with my other YouTube account, whatever I watch, I try to leave a comment, and if it's just like, thank you, nice, you know.
Seriously, thanks for tuning in. But hey, I think we've got a whole new decade to explore and absolutely no time to waste, so allow me to do the honors. Ikimashou! Let's do this. Japan in 1990 kicked off exactly where 1989 left off when on January the 4th, the stock exchange opened for its first trading day of the decade. And it was a sign of things to come. Back on December 29th, 1989, the Nikkei index had hit an unprecedented peak of nearly 39,000 points. It was the ultimate excuse to leave the 1980s behind with a massive party. I know, money can't buy happiness and all that, but you know. Not that first trading day of the 90s though. Kinda like waking up with a hangover. The market dipped. And not by a lot, mind you, but it was the first hairline fracture in a structure that was about to collapse. By October 1st, the situation had turned grim. The Nikkei briefly plummeted below 20,000 points that day, marking a staggering 49% drop in just 9 months.
I don't know how many people were like keen enough and smart enough to have, you know, sold all of their whatever just before this happened and just bank into the max. I'm sure some people did. I mean, as always, as a poor person, I do not understand the stock market. I've never even looked into it, got into it, or anything like that, right? So I don't know if I quite understand how any of this works, but I think some people do, and they managed to cash in at the right, perfect peak, you know.
From that point on, for the next 2 decades, the story of the Japanese economy became one of stagnation. The bubble had popped, and the party was over. The crash didn't just move numbers on a screen, it defined an entire generation of Japanese.
Yeah.
And it all began almost as soon as the calendar turned on January 4th, 1990.
I need to give this a try one day.
But hey,
it's a bit too late. Like she's already said, I don't know, so.
The stock market wasn't the only thing that fell flat on its face in Japan back then. On February 11th, the legendary Tokyo Dome, aka the Big Egg, hosted 2 of the biggest names in boxing. In one corner, the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world, Iron Mike Tyson. At this point, he was 37-0, with 33 of those wins ending in a knockout. In the other corner was James Buster Douglas.
Oh, James Buster Douglas, okay. I think I confused him with someone else with the name Buster. I'm pretty sure Larry Buster Holmes is someone. Yeah.
An underdog so overlooked that Vegas bookies almost didn't bother taking bets.
But if you don't know the story, his mom died, and he basically like swore to himself he would beat Mike Tyson for his mom. And on the other side, at this point, Tyson was like not in good shape because Don King, the terrible promoter, had basically taken over everything, fired his old trainers. So Tyson was like not really training, not really focused well anymore. So it was all the perfect circumstance for him to finally get defeated.
I think I just made that up. Either way, Douglas clearly didn't give a damn. He met Tyson with exactly 0 fear. Tyson, on the other hand, was reportedly a bit distracted. Rumor has it he spent his time in Tokyo partying like a rock star the night before, reportedly claiming he could beat Douglas even if he didn't sleep for 5 weeks straight.
What?
He did not, in fact, beat Buster Douglas. After 9 rounds of absolute warfare, Tyson was now...
I mean, he basically had like lost his head movement at this point, right? So, again, Don King had replaced all of his trainers and all that, and you know, it was stupid.
Down for the first time in his career during the 10th. The referee counted him out, and just like that, Buster Douglas was the new undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. It remains one of the greatest upsets in sports history.
Yeah.
Why did it happen, James? Because I wanted it. Why? Why did you win this fight that nobody on the planet gave you? His mother. In what way? God bless her heart.
Much like the Nikkei stock index, Tyson's aura of invincibility was shattered that night. He'd keep fighting for many more years, but honestly, he was never quite the same.
Yeah.
The Tokyo Dome, meanwhile, that night, it officially introduced itself to the world as a historic venue by hosting the fall of one of boxing's biggest ever giants. A true...
Whatever it is, I have to be at the Tokyo Dome one day. Probably a concert, I assume. But...
knockout success. But from huge sweaty men punching each other's brains out to beautiful flowers. On April the 1st, Osaka welcomed the world to maybe the most peak bubble event I've ever heard of.
Okay.
The International Garden and Greenery Expo. For the following 6 months, 140 hectares of land became a high-tech Garden of Eden. This wasn't your grandma's flower show. No disrespect to your grandma, but this was greenery reimagined through a 1990s lens of excess. At the center of this massive venue sat the Sea of Life, surrounded by city, mountain, and field zones connected by a custom-built frickin' transit system.
Okay.
Yeah. You had the 2-hectare Hananotani, a valley dedicated entirely to seasonal blooms. But you also had the tech. Giants like Panasonic, Canon, and Mitsubishi showed up with some cool, cutting-edge stuff. If you somehow got tired of both the flowers and the tech...
So it's not like just nature, it's also like just technology.
However, there were some world-class restaurants and even a full-scale amusement park. Because why not? The official theme was, and I quote, understanding the relationship between flowers, greenery, and human life, and aiming to create a rich and vibrant society for the 21st century. Rich is probably the key word here. The expo cost an estimated 130 billion yen. Yes, billion with a B. Fortunately, the investment paid off. A record-breaking 23 million visitors from 83 different countries flooded Osaka just to look at some petals. It was effectively one big-ass Hanami party.
That's nice.
Osaka's Expo 90 remains one of the largest exhibitions ever, a frankly insane event that now represents a perfect snapshot of the final couple of months of Japan's bubble era.
I love this whole room that looks like, you know, yeah, it's like in the future, and they have this kind of room to showcase this old rock of the ancient earth or something. It's very futuristic looking.
You'll love to see it. Then on May the 12th, Hiroshima's Municipal Stadium witnessed what was surely the most iconic ninja infiltration of the 20th century. Fans and athletes alike watched in disbelief as during Game 7 of a clash between the Hiroshima Toyo Carp and the Yomiuri Giants baseball teams, a man in a yellow shinobi outfit suddenly scaled the stadium's safety netting. He then pulled 3 banners from his backpack, reading, and I quote, "The Giants are forever invincible, don't deceive the fans, and the dramatic, divine retribution."
Okay. So, it's baseball related. I thought maybe it would be some kind of activist about, you know, something big and important and grandiose, but yeah, okay.
Evil will surely be destroyed. Right on, man. And the 4th banner, reading "The Carp are forever invincible," was accidentally dropped on the ground. But hey, it was his first mission as a shinobi, I was told, so cut the guy some slack. After angrily shouting something at the giant's dugout and tossing a couple of smoke bombs, he leaped down from the netting and fractured his leg. Turns out our yellow ninja wasn't actually a son of the Hidden Leaf Village, but rather a 39-year-old farmer from Higashi Hiroshima. He was fined 200,000 yen.
It's obviously the kind of thing you'd expect to see much more in the West, in the MLB or something, right? With all the MLB video we've watched, fans do insane stuff like this all the time. But in Japan, it's definitely probably like quite a unexpected event.
And for his now iconic 9-minute stunt, but the nickname the media gave him stuck. Kumo Otoko. Spider-Man. I think I'll stick with calling him a ninja. I mean, I never saw Peter Parker throw a smoke bomb. But either...
And also the Japanese Spider-Man is quite different. He is the messenger from hell. That's right.
Way, this guy is an absolute legend. Just your friendly neighborhood shinobi.
All this broken leg, I said, find, you know, all this just to like root for your team. I don't know if I respect it or it's stupid.
Commercial time です。
Only time I'm hype about commercial time. Schwarzenegger. Zen. Noodles, of course.
さあ、どう？日清カップヌードル。
That's great. We watched another video recently that was talking about like some of the weird, well, the trend of like, what was it? It was something about like Western, especially American celebrities in the 70s, 80s, 90s. You know, it wasn't seen as really good to do like ads on TV, but it would be okay for them to do it in another country. And so a lot of them would go, Japan for example, but then they were embarrassed, you know, like if it leaked to the US. But Arnold was one of the only one who, you know, even to this day is like proud of his weird Japanese ad and he doesn't mind. He even like was replying to a Reddit thread about it, talking about the story of it. Oh, I think this is the final movie by Akira Kurosawa. I haven't watched it yet. Rest in peace.
On June the 1st, navigating Japan's second biggest city became a lot more convenient and cool when the Osaka monorail first took flight. The first line of what would become an extensive network launched that day, connecting Minami Ibaraki and Senri-Ichigo. Plans for connecting Osaka's city center with the suburbs had actually existed since all the way back in 1966, but construction didn't actually begin until 16 years later in 1982.
Wow.
By 1990 though, Osaka finally had itself a shiny new monorail. With 18 stations stretching across 28 kilometers, it's now the longest monorail in the country.
Is that Sonic? No. Some kind of weird mascot with a soccer ball.
And an indispensable part of life in and around Osaka. Because who needs stereo when you've got mono? At the end of that same month, hey, a royal wedding. On June 29th, Fumihito of the Japanese imperial family married Kawashima Kiko, the daughter of an economics professor at Gakushin University, which is actually where the two met as undergraduates. I imagine dating your professor's daughter could be a bit awkward, but what do I know? Things probably work a bit differently when you're a literal prince. There was some pushback though. Officials of the Imperial Household Agency allegedly resented that Fumihito didn't wait for his elder brother Naruhito to marry first, as was tradition. But the F in Fumihito
Always the tradition.
clearly stands for f it, because the marriage went through anyway, so the Akishino branch of the family was formed. This relationship actually bore some important fruits later down the line as well. In 2006, Kiko gave birth to Hisahito, who is currently the only male heir in line to ascend the throne after his father. So
yeah, I heard about the crisis.
basically, the future of a 2,600-year-old unbroken bloodline might rest on this young man's shoulders.
Can you even imagine? I mean, I don't want to be...
No pressure, my dude. On September 14th, Japan's auto industry shifted up a gear with the release of the legendary Honda NSX. God, this thing is gorgeous. Designed by chief engineer Uehara Shigeru and developed with input from none other than F1 legend Ayrton Senna, this was basically Japan's very own Ferrari. The NSX was a mid-engine exotic intended to be a daily driver as well, an idea Honda had been playing around with since the mid-80s when they were mostly known for reliable, but ultimately unexciting cars. The NSX, by the way, stands for New Sports Car Experimental, because that's exactly what it was. An experiment, a shot in the dark. But Honda nailed it on the first attempt. On paper, its 3-liter V6 with 250 horsepower might have made Ferrari engineers laugh over their morning coffee, but what the NSX delivered was an incredibly balanced, reliable, and thrilling analog driving experience that hardly any car can match to this day. Then there's the fact that its interior was literally inspired by an F-16 fighter jet. It's just so cool. And even the mid-engine layout has a great little backstory. The idea supposedly came from an unreleased mid-engine version of the tiny little Honda City, which was so much fun to drive around the company parking lot that employees basically convinced the bosses to go all in on a mid-engine sports car.
Okay.
And thank God they did, because if you ask me, this thing is way cooler than most Ferraris.
It is sick, and as I always say, one of my favorite things with this type of cars is the headlights that can come out and come in. It's a little thing, but you know, that feels so robot, you know, the romance of the robot in a car. Love it.
I might be a bit biased, of course. A second generation NSX hit the streets in 2016, which is a really cool car in its own right, but there is nothing quite like an early first-gen NSX, one of the biggest Japanese automotive icons made in the 1990s. Later that month, on the 28th, Japan and North Korea gave each other a big old warm hug when leaders signed the Joint Declaration of the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, the Japan Socialist Party, and the Workers' Party of Korea on Japan-North Korea relations. Essentially, the two nations were buddies now. Or at least that was the idea. The Liberal Democratic Party's Kanimaru Shin and Tanabe Makoto of the Japan Socialist Party traveled to North Korea to meet none other than the eternal president himself, Kim Il-sung.
Yeah, because while today, and for quite a few decades now, we have the impression of North Korea being, having always been, since the Korean War, like that closed. I think in the 80s, 90s, they were trying to be a bit more open to the West. They're like quite a bit more relation with the rest of the world. And then I think it's like in the 2000s that things pretty changed.
The whole trip was actually a surprise visit, and surprise is the theme here. Uncharacteristic for the hardline LDP, Kanemaru Shin apologized for what the Japanese had done to the Korean people and even promised compensation for what had happened, all during a meeting where he was reportedly moved to tears. The great leader has that effect on people.
Did that ever happen? Any kind of reparation or something?
You know. And beyond that, the declaration also recognized that, quote, the abnormal situation existing between the two countries must be mitigated and diplomatic relations established as quickly as possible, end quote, among other things. And generally, this entire attempt at stabilizing the Japan-North Korea relationship was met with a fair amount of criticism back home in Japan. After all, the end of the Cold War was still more than a year away. Many critics saw the whole compensation thing as Japan more or less funding the DPRK, which, given what was going on at the time, raised a couple of eyebrows.
Fair enough.
Besides that, Kanemaru also failed to address North Korea's nuclear program or the abduction of Japanese citizens. In short, he thought
We'd watched the video about that once, it's really something.
it could settle Japan's final post-war grudge with a handshake and a checkbook, and it backfired big time. I hope that Pyongyang hotel breakfast was decent, at least.
Yeah.
コマーシャルタイムです。
Jolt? Voilà. Ça qui fait là ou bien? Jolt. Is it good? Does it still exist?
A very eventful month of November then kicked off on the 12th with the official enthronement of Akihito as the 125th Emperor of Japan. His reign, as well as the Heisei era of Japan, technically began on January 7th, 1989, following the death of his father Hirohito.
Yeah.
But this was the day he officially got to claim the chrysanthemum throne. Akihito was a noteworthy emperor for several reasons. Not only did he succeed one of the most famous and influential emperors in Japanese history, but he was also the first member of the Japanese imperial family to get married live on television back in 1959. To a commoner, no less, Shoda Michiko. As for his big enthronement ceremony 31 years later, that one was held where else but the Imperial Palace, where representatives from 158 different nations, monarchs, heads of state, and everyone else who was important poured in alongside the media to witness Akihito officially become the new symbol of the state and the unity of the people. The name of his era, Heisei, by the way, stands for peace everywhere, and since Japan started... Hold on, let me check real quick. Yeah, 0 wars during his tenure, which ended in 2019. I guess you could say it was mission accomplished, which is more than what can be said of his father. But
yeah, I guess, yeah. Obviously, sounds pretty good. Huh? Though at the same time, again, like, does he actually have any power? So, like, is he actually responsible for the 0 wars, or is it more the government, you know?
While no wars were started under Akihito, tragedy followed just a day later. On November 13th, Sano Fusako was kidnapped in her hometown of Sanjo, Niigata Prefecture. Fusako-chan was just 9 years old at the time, a 4th grade elementary student who disappeared after watching a school baseball game. Despite a massive search involving hundreds of police and volunteers, no clues were found, and as the days turned into years, rumors of North Korean abductions or something even more sinister began to swirl. But a real answer to what really happened to her didn't.
I don't know if, like, again, we'd watched a video about that, and there's some Japanese citizen who gets abducted like that, right? But I don't think it's a massive number, so I don't know if in Japan, even today, if someone goes missing, is that one of the first things people think, like, they were abducted by North Korea?
Come until 9 years and 2 months later. On January 28, 2000, health officials visited the home of a 73-year-old woman in Kashiwazaki because her son had been acting strangely and violently towards her. Turns out that her son, who was 28 at the time of the kidnapping, was the man responsible for Sano Fusako's disappearance and had held her captive in the upstairs floor of his apartment ever since. When police arrived at his apartment to have a talk, Sano identified herself, and finally, after 3,364 days in captivity, the case was solved.
Insane.
Fusako, now 19 years old, was alive. But she was also extremely thin, weak, and obviously traumatized, and it took several years for her to return to a somewhat normal.
I mean, 9 years, like, basically most of the teenage years, from 9 to 18. Just insane. I can't even imagine. And stuck in one room, I mean.
Life. Thankfully though, she recovered and her kidnapper received a 14-year sentence.
14 years? What the fuck? That's barely over the time that it took from her. What the fuck?
It ended in 2015, 2 years before he was found deceased alone in his apartment.
Okay, that's good, but fucking hell. I don't understand the law, like, and it's every country. I always say it in so many videos like this we watch, I mean. How does this guy not get put in prison for the rest of his life? He kidnapped a little girl and kept her in his room for 9 years. How should he ever be allowed outside again? It's insane to me.
It remains one of the more tragic stories of 1990, but thankfully one that ended on a somewhat positive note.
I guess.
Finally, time for some darn video games. On November 21st, 1990, Nintendo dropped its sophomore album, the Super Famicom, also known in the West as the Super Nintendo, the SNES, or simply the SNES. Released in Japan and Europe with this beautiful, cute, rounded design, and in North America as this slightly uglier gray/purple brick. Sorry, dear Americans, the Super Famicom came out swinging. Following up this...
My consoles at the time liked the grey look, I mean. Even a PS1 was like, just... It wasn't very nice to look at. I liked the shape of it, right? But it was just this kind of like cheap looking grey. Yeah, I don't know. I guess it was just cheaper, you know, to not have colors.
Success of Nintendo's first home console, 1983's Famicom, was a Herculean task. After all, this was the console that literally saved the gaming market, at least in the US. Nintendo nailed it. 16 glorious bits, a far better sound chip than the Sega Mega Drive/Genesis. I'm sorry, Sega fanboys. And most importantly, one of the greatest libraries of games in history. It launched at 25,000 yen, a significant jump from the 15,000 yen price tag of its predecessor 7 years prior. Yet, it absolutely flew off the shelves. 300,000 units sold in Japan in just a few hours. The thing was reportedly so sought after that units were shipped at night to avoid hijackings by the Yakuza. Or so the story goes. True or not, the Super Famicom/SNES once again established Nintendo as the biggest name in gaming.
Sure.
For the US, the Sega Genesis did hold its own there, but even here, the SNES eventually reigned supreme. Roughly 50 million units sold worldwide, 17 million in Japan alone, represents a slight dip from the original Famicom's 62 million, but in terms of sheer legacy, a truly worthy successor with titles like Chrono Trigger, Star Fox, Final Fantasy VI, and many, many more. In Japan, it launched with only 2 games, but both of them were great.
That is crazy to think, yeah. Launching a console with 2 games, I mean... You know, obviously, gaming is so different today, right? That it just couldn't happen since most gaming device can play games from different stores and all that, but still, that's really something. Buying a console with only 2 games, I mean, at the time it was probably not that weird, but I can't imagine.
Zero, and the winner of our very first annual Aniki Game of the Year award.
Game of the Year.
My world. Looks nice. I mean, as always, I've never really played Mario. That's not true. I've played at a friend's house once. One of them for like an hour or something.
Going into December, Sony dropped its first revolutionary tech product of the decade, the KW3600 HD, a TV weighing 100...
Wait, what was HD for this time? Was it like 480p or something?
175 pounds. Now, Aniki likes them thick, especially when it comes to TVs, but that's not why this thing is special. What you're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is the first ever mass-produced high-definition TV for the consumer market. Professional gear able to display HD content existed before this thing, of course, but basically, this was the first time a regular person could walk into a store and buy HD. How did you actually get to watch HD content on this thing? Great question. Technologies like HD Laserdisc came a few years later down the line, but back in 1990, well, that's where yet another exciting new technology came in. High Vision. The High Vision standard started development at Japanese broadcaster NHK all the way back in the 1960s. Following the 1964 Tokyo Olympics, by the late 80s, it was ready to hit the market and basically just waiting for TVs to catch up. Remember that crazy flower exhibition back in April? Yep, that one had a broadcast in High Vision, which is the exact same footage you've been looking at this.
Frankly, like, even when I was actually watching TV in the 2000s as a kid, really, like, you know, looking back on it now, they were really, like, cheapening out, I can tell you that much. I had, you know, definitely like a 720 or 1080p TV already at that time, right? But I can clearly remember, like, how different from channel to channel the quality would be, or like from movie to movie, right? Like, I don't think this kind of like public free broadcaster cared that much. Obviously, like, you know, sometimes would put on the movies, right? And the movie would look noticeably worse than maybe like the DVD version I had or something. You know, I don't really know how it works, the whole system of like what quality they choose to broadcast stuff, but it felt like it was constantly like changing resolution. It was something, yeah. And I'm saying that before I even understood the concept of like resolution, but I just remember like thinking this looks bad, you know, basically, compared to like this other channel where this looks clean, you know.
Entire time. So, by the end of 1990, the Japanese could finally get some HD goodness into their very own four walls. Well,
nice.
The ultra-wealthy Japanese, that is, because the KW3600 HD with one hell of a price tag. 2.3 million yen, or about 17,000 US dollars in 1990 money. Yeah. You know what? That didn't even really give you the whole experience, because in order to watch High Vision broadcasts, you also needed one of these things, a so-called Muse decoder, which at the time set you back another 750,000 yen, or around 5,500 US dollars.
Wow.
In the end, your wallet was around 3 million yen lighter, money that, just for comparison, could have also bought you the newest Nissan Fairlady C. Pixels or horsepower? It's almost like choosing between two of your own children. Almost. Let's say.
Yeah, I also remember like you was talking about how heavy the TV is, and in the 2000s, one time my dad decided to buy some. It was a TV that was like insanely heavy, and it was, I think he called it like a crystal TV. It had a screen that was very weird, you know, like the screen wasn't. Like if you pushed on it, it kind of caved in a little bit. And the thing was like massive. It was this kind of like rectangular standing block, this deep behind, this wide on the side. I mean, like probably like 1.5 meters or something. It weighed like at least 50 kilos or something. It was just massive. And frankly, it's been too long. I can't remember if like the quality was that great or something. But I think it was called like a crystal TV. At least that's what we were told or something. Crystal TV. Yeah, I think that's what it was called. No. 2000s Crystal TV. There's a bunch of monitors and stuff like that. Like it was the biggest one. Oh, it was this. It was literally something like this. I mean, not exactly this one, but something like this. Yeah. You had like some big ass part at the bottom, and the screen was like the upper half. It's a CRT TV, yeah. I don't know if Crystal is right. Yeah, it was something like this. But again, I don't remember much from it. Just that it was heavy and weird.
Month, Japan got its first space journalist and made history doing it. Akiyama Toyohiro, chief correspondent at Japanese broadcaster TBS, became the first Japanese person ever to fly in space. The mission was a collaboration between TBS and the Soviet space program, and TBS had plenty of motivation. The company was approaching its 40th anniversary and saw this as one hell of a way to celebrate, and let's be honest, an even better way to boost ratings. A total of 163 TBS employees threw their names into the hat for the privilege of being launched into orbit. Akiyama was the man they picked. In August of 1989, he began astronaut training at the Yuri Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center, and on December 2nd of 1990, he joined mission commander Viktor Afanasyev and flight engineer Musa Manarov aboard the Soyuz TM-11, bound for the Soviet Mir space station. And he did not have the greatest of times up there. Space sickness hit him hard. His Soviet cosmonaut buddies reportedly said they had
I didn't even know that was a thing, space sickness. Oh, interesting.
never seen a man vomit like that before. On top of that, he was dealing with some serious nicotine withdrawal, having been a
I also didn't think of that, yeah. I'm surprised they picked someone who was a smoker.
very heavy smoker before training forced him to quit cold turkey. When asked what he was most looking forward to upon returning to Earth, Akiyama's answer was immediate. A cigarette. The man was floating in space, hurling into a bag, and dreaming of a smoke break.
Humanity. Humanity. You're in freaking space, and you still can't kick your addiction, right? We are doomed.
Just gone all the way and quit altogether, if you ask me. Then again, who am I to judge? But regardless, he pushed through because, well, he was in space, which is awesome, and the milestone was enormous. Akiyama became not only the first Japanese person to reach space, but the first journalist in history to do so as well. Every night he broadcast live reports from aboard the station, covering daily life in zero gravity and conducting a handful of simple experiments. But the people tuned in. TBS saw a noticeable ratings bump in the early days of the mission, though interest did taper off a little bit as the novelty wore off. The broadcaster reportedly lost somewhere in the region of $7.4 million on the whole venture too. For a milestone of this size, in the grand scheme of things, that feels like a bargain. Not to mention that there was something quietly wonderful about watching an ordinary person go to space and visibly struggle with it. Akiyama returned to Earth safely on December 10th, lit one up, continued working at TBS until 1995 when he decided that television had become too commercialized, quit, got divorced, and reinvented himself as a farmer and later a professor of agriculture.
Okay.
Journalist,
Quite a life.
astronaut, farmer, professor, legend. That, my friends, is
Very
the
cool
remarkable
story.
story of Akiyama Toyohiro, the first Japanese person in space. And to close out the first year of the new decade, a brand new theme park in Tokyo. Because apparently, Tokyo Disneyland wasn't enough. On December the 7th, Sanrio Puroland opened its doors in Tama, Tokyo, ready to welcome Hello Kitty fanatics with open, fluffy little arms. In case you somehow missed the memo,
I never actually know when did Hello Kitty even start.
Sanrio is the company behind one of Japan's most iconic cutesy mascots, as well as a whole universe of other characters, like, let's see, My Melody, Cinnamoroll, Agretsuko.
Agretsuko is great, come on. Even though probably not that famous. My Melody, in a video we watched recently, like of weird stuff on Google Map, there was like a My Melody plushie in the middle of a lake on some spike or something.
Yeah, I got absolutely no clue about any of these, but clearly that
Agretsuko is definitely not like the others. Basically like a cute office lady who sings and screams death metal to like vent after like, you know, our office job.
is my problem, because the Sanrio fandom is doing just fine without me. The park spans around 46 square kilometers and was built to go head-to-head with its massively popular Disney neighbor, and compete it does. Sanrio Puroland is now one of the busiest theme parks in Japan, pulling in roughly 1.5 million visitors per year. What makes it stand out beyond the mascots though? Well, for one, there is a genuine educational angle to the place, which is both a pretty cool concept and conveniently a big part of why the park got approved in the first place. Sanrio also made a smart location call by planning the park in Tama City, a well-known commuter town in the greater Tokyo area. Translation: dads riding the train past it every single day suddenly found themselves with very little defense against a small child pointing out the window.
Sure.
Educational, dad. So, whether you're a lifelong Sanrio devotee, a curious commuter...
Frankly, I would very likely visit this one more than Disney one. You know, I've never been that into Disney myself. And you always hear the horror stories about like the Disney park, how expensive it is and all that. It's worth it to go to like lesser known parks, so yeah. I'd probably more go to this one than the Disney one.
Or simply someone who's had it up to here with Disney stuff. Sanrio Puroland might just be your place. Live shows, themed attractions, merch stores, and a kawaii overload that could drop a grown adult to their knees. This segment was not sponsored by Sanrio. And on that note, as the Japanese flood into their exciting new theme park, we wave goodbye to 1990.
Oh no.
Again, don't forget to check.
Alright, well, that was nice. Definitely, it seems like things aren't too bad yet, but it's the beginning of the downfall, right? So it's just that people haven't realized yet things are going bad. So yeah, as always, I love this kind of videos. I could watch like hours of it, you know, about like just a single year. I almost wish this was like covering months by months, you know, even though this series would take years to finish. Yeah, I am the selfish viewer, you know. Seriously, I would love it. It's so freaking interesting. Anyway, let's watch 1991. I guess we can skip the intro.
We kick off year 2 of the Japanese 1990s with the very first day of it. As the clock struck midnight on January 1st, 1991, every single phone number in Tokyo underwent a small but surprisingly significant change, jumping from 9 digits to, brace yourself here, 10 digits.
Okay.
The horror.
Nice.
But in all seriousness, yeah, doesn't sound like much, does it? Up until New Year's Eve 1990, Tokyo numbers looked like this. 03 followed by a unique 7-digit combination. The change, that lone 3 was now joined by another 3, making it 033 and so on. Just one extra digit, not a big deal. Just dial that one additional 3 when nervously calling your Tokyo crush and hoping their dad doesn't pick up. But things looked a bit different when you happen to have printed, painted, or plastered a Tokyo phone number on literally anything.
Yeah, that would be a massive pain. No doubt about it. I wonder why the change.
Which, as it turned out, a lot of people had. Ad boards, shop signs, business cards, printed materials of every imaginable kind. All of it became kind of incorrect overnight. For anyone who knew about the extra 3, it was a minor inconvenience, but companies weren't about to gamble on whether their customers would figure it out, so advertisement across Tokyo had to be updated en masse, with television spots actively airing to explain the change. Not the end of the world, but absolutely a headache, which was particularly unwelcome on top of whatever the New Year's celebrations had already done to people's heads the night before.
As you can see, you wake up to it, you feel like going back to sleep. Think about the name of this movie. Tokyo Love Story.
Bye bye.
おやすみ。
おやすみ。Game of the Year.
1981. Street Fighter 2. Fair enough. As always, I don't play fighting games. You know, I think they're cool, but I don't play them. Never played Street Fighter. I wonder if there was arcade when I was young, close to where I lived, if I would have gotten into fighting game.
On March 19th, a much more legitimate headache was finally put to rest with the launch of the Narita Express. Nicknamed the Nex, this is far more than just another train line in the most train-obsessed country on Earth. Sharper minds among you may have already clocked the name Narita Express, as in a train designed to connect Narita Airport directly with the rest of Tokyo. Because before March 19th, 1991, making the journey from Narita into the city center was frankly a bit of an ordeal.
It seems impossible to get to on time.
Oh, you mean Narita, right?
I'm so tired of getting caught in that traffic from Shinjuku.
Yeah, I'm sick of it.
At some point along the journey, you actually had to get on a bus. And I don't need to tell you how we feel about buses now, do I? From this day forward, however, the bus into Tokyo was reserved strictly for the masochists, because everyone else, tourists, business travelers, weary, jet-lagged souls of all kinds, could now make the roughly 1-hour trip into central Tokyo in considerably more comfort and style. And the Nex didn't stop there. It also connected the airport with nearby Yokohama, making it an indispensable link for anyone landing at Narita rather than Haneda. Just when you think Japan had built every piece of infrastructure it could possibly ever need, they find yet another perfectly legitimate excuse to build more trains. Honestly, good for them. Then on April the 1st, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government found itself a pretty good excuse of its own. Specifically, an excuse to move into the most unhinged government building in the world at the time.
Really?
On that day, the leadership of Japan's capital packed its bags and relocated from its old digs into this thing. The Tokyo-to Chosha, affectionately as the Tojo. And this building is spectacular in every sense of the word. Designed by the legendary Tange Kenzo and constructed between April of 1988 and December of 1990, it stands 48 stories and 243 meters or 797 feet tall, holding the record for the tallest building in Tokyo by roof height until the Midtown Tower came along in 2007. The Tojo remains, however, to this day as the tallest city hall on the entire planet, with a design that, by the way, was meant to be what you'd get if a Gothic cathedral and an integrated circuit somehow had a very ambitious child. I can see the vision.
It's
the price tag,
Twitter, yes.
157 billion yen, or roughly $1 billion of good old-fashioned taxpayer money. But to be fair to the government, the move was a long time coming. The old city hall in Marunouchi had been described since the 1970s as, and I quote, dilapidated, dispersed, and cramped, making it undesirable in terms of providing services to the citizens and improving the efficiency of staff. And so, in April of 1991, the people keeping Tokyo's wheels turning packed up from Chiyoda Ward and relocated to Shinjuku. Just a couple of stones throws away from Kabukicho. Which, look, I'm not trying to imply anything here, but even a government worker needs to unwind every once in a while. Futuristic, record-breaking, and eye-wateringly expensive, the new Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building was proof that even a bubble hangover couldn't stop Japan from finishing the insane architectural projects it had started.
So it didn't really address it, but I thought it was going somewhere where the building in the end was not really appropriate and maybe designed in a way that wasn't the best for this kind of government stuff, but maybe not. Maybe it actually worked out. Is it still there today? Is it still used, I mean?
Also in April, Japan took a massive leap towards its mobile future with the release of the first couple of MOVA phones under communications giant NTT. Now, what in God's name is a MOVA?
It looks a lot more like a calculator.
It's actually a little bit confusing at first, so here's the simple version. MOVA was simultaneously a mobile communications service and a brand of ultra-compact, ultra-pocketable mobile phones. And that April 1991 launch came with not one, but 4 devices, each designed and manufactured by a different Japanese electronics giant.
Okay.
You had the MOVA P by Panasonic, apparently the most popular of the bunch. The MOVA N by NEC, which has a legitimate claim to being the world's first ever flip phone. and the Mover D and the Mover F by Mitsubishi and Fujitsu respectively. A proper boy band of mobile phones, if you will. Unimpressive by today's standards? Sure. Revolutionary for 1991? Absolutely. And get this, here's the best part. These phones were essentially a revenge project. Just 2 years earlier, American company Motorola dared to drop the micro.
My first phone was a Motorola flip phone in the mid-2000s, yeah. I wish I remembered the model or something. It's a shame, but yeah.
Attack, a for the time impossibly slim pocketable device that landed at a time when Japan's most cutting-edge mobile offering looked something like this. Yeah, the Japanese felt a bit embarrassed, because after all, they were supposed to be the ones making the most amazing consumer electronics. Basically told those aforementioned manufacturers to get the heck out of here and not come back until they could beat Motorola. And what they came back with were 4 of the smallest mobile phones the world had ever seen. And the Japanese public responded enthusiastically, to put it mildly. NTT's mobile phone sales more than doubled in the 1991 fiscal year compared to the year prior, with over 500,000 handsets sold, despite the sputtering economy and despite the fact that running one of these things was anything but cheap. The monthly fee alone came in at 17,000 yen, or roughly $126. Now that tells you everything you need to know about just how badly the Japanese wanted to get connected on the go. And as for NTT, they had struck a goldmine. Riding the wave of Mova's success, they incorporated NTT Mobile Communications just a few months later as a new subsidiary that would be rebranded the following year as NTT Docomo. Today, Docomo is of course Japan's largest wireless carrier with over 91 million subscribers. In a way, it all started with these 4 small phones, brilliantly advertised by Bruce Willis. Gotta love the early 90s.
Wow. Big.
Commercial time です。
Commercial time です。Nice. Save the train. Oh. It's an energy drink.
The following month then came in with a double whammy on May 15th. First up, something that the regular Aniki viewer is probably sick of hearing about at this point. The Act on Prevention of Unjust Acts by members of organized crime groups, which, as the name rather plainly suggests, introduced serious countermeasures against our quote-unquote favorite tattooed, pinky-deficient gangsters, the Yakuza. Passed on this day and coming into effect in March of the following year, this anti-organized crime law arrived on the back of a very turbulent few years for the Japanese criminal underworld. By 1991, the Yakuza were numerous, wealthy, and extraordinarily well-connected. From humble street stalls to Japan's biggest corporations, the major crime syndicates had their fingers, yes, all 9 of them, in virtually every corner of Japanese business. Yet, for a long time, that alone wasn't enough for the Japanese government to act. And for a long time, the government's approach had been one of cautious tolerance. As long as the Yakuza kept things among themselves, the authorities largely looked the other way. But a string of violent gang conflicts throughout the 1980s that spilled into civilian life, that was the final straw. The Yakuza, much like the Japanese economy, had grown too big and too bold for its own good. These new laws did something that sounds almost embarrassingly obvious in hindsight. It gave law enforcement the framework to formally designate specific organizations as crime groups, something that unbelievably was never properly codified before. 24 groups were designated when the law came into force, including the Yamaguchi-gumi and the Inagawa-kai, and a long list of behaviors was now explicitly banned too. Protection money, illegal debt collection, intimidating real estate deals, and much more. Bosses were also made personally liable for their members' actions, piercing the organizational shield they'd hidden behind for decades. The twist, rather than dismantling the Yakuza, the law initially pushed them underground instead, forcing crime groups to infiltrate legitimate businesses and become even harder to detect. Less visible, arguably even more dangerous. No, and the Yakuza actually staged protest marches against this law, arguing that it violated their constitutional right to freedom of association. You've got to respect the audacity, just a little. The very same day, while Japanese law enforcement was busy spitting in the face of organized crime, one of Tokyo's most legendary nightclubs ever threw open its doors and cranked up the volume. That night, Juliana's Tokyo began operation in the Shibaura district, already one of the hottest nightlife destinations in the capital, home to established venues like the legendary Shibaura Gold. And Juliana's Tokyo didn't just join the party, it became the party. Officially called Juliana's Tokyo British Discotheque in Shibaura and launched as a collaboration between Japanese trading company Nissho Iwai and British leisure company Juliana's, the club's original concept was almost wholesome. Give ordinary office ladies who couldn't get into the more exclusive Shibaura clubs a place where they could decompress after a long day of work. And decompress they did. Juliana's most iconic feature were its 130 centimeter high elevated platforms on either side of the dance floor, where women, both professional dancers and
it's crazy to dance in miniskirt in front of guys like this on an elevated platform. I mean, maybe that's the appeal, I guess.
And guests wearing skin-tight bodycon dresses and brandishing Juliana's issue fans could be, let's say, carefully observed by the men standing below. That image became instantly iconic and instantly controversial. Some in the media were appalled by the whole setup, not entirely without reason, but many of the women themselves saw it differently, describing Juliana's as a rare space to shed the...
I mean, yeah, I would say, like, if you go there and you climb onto the platform to dance, you know, you're not paid to do it, you're willing to do it, it's your thing, it's fine, right?
Rigid mask of professional life and just, you know, become someone else entirely for a few hours. And hey, the club was also quietly influential in Japan's music scene, introducing techno, then still relatively new to Japanese ears in the early 90s, to a massive audience, partly through a series of official Juliana's Tokyo CD compilations. The venue itself officially held 2,000 people, but at its peak, regularly packed in 3,000 or more, with hundreds more queuing outside hoping to get in. Short, Juliana's Tokyo burned bright and briefly. The economy eventually took its toll. That, coupled with a few bad business decisions, meant that on August 31st, 1994, the club shut down for good.
That was
4,000 people showed up that day for one final night, with a rumored 10,000 more outside who didn't make it in. That lasted just over 3 years, but those 3 years produced images so vivid and so alive that they now feel almost surreal against the backdrop of post-bubble Japan. The party was short, intense, and utterly unforgettable. Rest in peace, Juliana's Tokyo. June of 1991 then turned out to be one of the most quietly momentous months in the history of Japanese tech. First, Sony released its CCD TR1 8mm camcorder. And while that might not sound like headline news, what was inside that camcorder absolutely was. Because the CCD TR1 was the first commercial product in history to feature a rechargeable lithium-ion battery.
I see.
I want to be upfront about something here. I'm not trying to include Sony in almost every single timeline.
Yeah, but it's not surprising though. I mean, a lot of this technology is so important, not only to Japan, but to the world, right? I mean, yeah.
Japan episode, But what do you do when one company goes this relentlessly hard for an entire decade? Because the commercialization of the lithium-ion battery might genuinely be the most quietly influential thing Sony ever did. Now, to be fair, Sony didn't conjure this thing out of thin air or anything. The foundation was laid by others. M. Stanley Whittingham first developed a rechargeable lithium battery back in the 1970s, and in the 1980s, John Goodenough, a man with a last name that is almost aggressively perfect for the context, then expanded
I wish that was my name. Good enough, that's what I want to be.
significantly on that work. Goodenough's research was in fact good enough to catch the attention of both Sony and Japanese chemicals giant Asahi Kasei, who teamed up to finally bring the technology to the mass market. June 1991 was the moment it all clicked into place, and from that point on, consumer electronics were never the same. Think about every device you own that needs charging. Your phone, your laptop, your tablet, your wireless headphones, your electric car if you're fancy. All of it running on some type of lithium-ion battery. An invention that is not only still the global standard more than 3 decades later, but one that has quietly become one of the most indispensable technologies in modern human life. Not bad for a 1991 camcorder release, huh?
And again, it's only like 30 years old in invention, right? And yet it's such an important thing to our daily life in so many ways.
But June of 1991 wasn't done yet, because that same month, a researcher at NEC's Fundamental Research Laboratories in Tsukuba, Japan, peered through an electron microscope and saw something that nobody had properly documented before. Something that would eventually change materials science forever. That researcher's name was Ichima Sumio. He'd been working at NEC since 1987, and in June of 1991, while going about his regular work, he spotted something strange under the microscope. Tiny, tube-shaped structures made entirely of carbon, each one thousands of times thinner than a single human hair. Carbon nanotubes. And while that might sound like something you'd hear in a science class and immediately forget, just bear with me here, because this one actually matters. What are these things actually good for? Well, despite being almost impossibly small, these little tubes are incredibly strong. Stronger than steel, in fact, and at a fraction of the weight. They also conduct electricity and heat really well, which makes them useful in all kinds of ways. Stronger and lighter materials for things like aircraft and sports equipment, better electronics, advances in medicine, and even improvements in battery technology. And hey, the applications are actually still being discovered to this day. Ichima published his findings in the journal Nature on November 7th of the same year. Just like that, the scientific world had a new obsession. One quiet morning at a microscope in Tsukuba, and the ripple effects are still being felt more than 30 years later. Crazy stuff.
Amazing.
June, however, also brought the first major natural disaster in Japan of 1991. On the 3rd, Mount Unzen in Nagasaki Prefecture erupted. The volcano had been showing signs of unrest since November of 1990, prompting authorities to evacuate around 12,000 nearby residents in the months that followed. But the eruption on June 3rd still proved devastating. A pyroclastic flow extended 4.5 kilometers or nearly 3 miles from the crater and tragically claimed the lives of 43 people, most of the journalists and scientists who had positioned themselves close to the mountain to document the event. The human cost, combined with the widespread property damage, made the so-called Heisei eruption of Mount Unzen the worst volcanic disaster in Japan's post-war history at the time.
I was gonna say, has there been worse? Okay.
Volcano wouldn't fully settle down until 1995, ending its most active period in nearly 200 years. The previous episode of volcanic activity having been the catastrophic 1792 eruption, which triggered a massive landslide and a
I think we've read about this on Wikipedia.
resulting tsunami that killed an estimated 15,000 people. By that grim measure, 1991 could have been far worse. But 43 lives lost, many of them people who had gone to bear witness to history, is a tragedy by any standards.
Sure.
Then on August 5th, Japan lost one of the towering figures of its post-war automotive history when Honda Soichiro passed away at the age of 84.
That's a name, no?
The legacy this man left behind is almost impossible to overstate.
Yeah.
Soichiro had been obsessed with engines from boyhood, though his first instinct wasn't to build them, it was to race them. At 29, he competed in one of the very first races held at Japan's first proper racing circuit, the Tamagawa Speedway, behind the wheel of a modified Ford he called Hamamatsu. He never finished the race. He crashed heavily and sustained injuries severe enough to end his racing career before it had really begun. Which is a sad story in and of itself, but for a man like Honda Soichiro, stepping away from fast machines entirely was simply not an option. And so he told himself, hey, if I can't race them, I'll build them.
I will make them.
In 1946, he founded the Honda Motor Company, and over the following decades turned it into one of the most respected motor vehicle manufacturers on the planet.
Sure.
Both on 4 wheels and 2. Today, Honda is not just Japan's second largest car maker after the mighty Toyota, it is also the single largest manufacturer of motorcycles in the entire world.
I didn't know that.
Basically, if it carries his family name, you can safely assume the people who built it know exactly what they are doing. But Honda Soichiro's impact went far beyond the factory floor. He also oversaw the construction of the legendary Suzuka circuit, a Formula One staple almost every year since 1987. And as an engine manufacturer, Honda ranks among the most successful in F1 history with 6 Constructors' Championships and over 80 Grand Prix victories to their name. And of course, just 1 year prior to his passing, his company had given the world the NSX, a fitting final chapter in a story that began with a young man crashing a Ford called Hamamatsu on a Tokyo racetrack. Honda Soichiro went from nearly being forced out of racing forever to building one of the greatest automotive and motorsport legacies the world has ever seen. A legend in every sense of the word.
That's great. I'm just gonna say it.
マーシャルタイムです。
I love it.
冷蔵庫は
Fake.
氷と味で美味しくなくちゃ美味しくなくちゃちゃちゃ氷も自動で水はうまいちゃちゃ花も上
It looks so fancy. It's crazy. Like, the fridge I have right now is like, you would think it's like 50 years older than the one they're showing here, which is 30 years old. Like, mine is so simple compared to this. I mean, it's the same size, but, you know, it's insanely simple in terms of compartment and all that.
What better way to celebrate the height of summer than with a week of world-class athletics? On August 23rd, Tokyo's Olympic Stadium opened its doors for the 3rd World Championships in athletics, welcoming 1,517 competitors from 167 nations to compete across the sport's most iconic disciplines. And what a week it turned out to be. 3 world records fell in Tokyo that week. The US 4x 100-meter relay team blazed to a stunning 37.5 seconds, and a certain Carl Lewis ran a 100 meters in just 9.86 seconds. World record. But the defining moment of the entire championship came in the men's long jump final. And honestly, it might be one of the greatest individual sporting moments of the entire decade. Lewis, who hadn't lost a long jump competition in like a decade, came in on a streak of 65 consecutive wins, delivered a massive leap of 8.91 meters. The only reason it wasn't a world record? Wind assistance. Those starred elements. But then something extraordinary happened. Lewis' longtime rival Mike Powell stepped up and launched himself 8.95 meters. No wind assistance whatsoever. Just like that, Carl Lewis's decade-long unbeaten streak was over, and Mike Powell had set a world record in the long jump that, more than 35 years later, has still never been broken.
Really?
For 1 week, Japan's eastern capital became the center of the athletics universe, and history was made in the most beautiful setting imaginable. A week after the championships wrapped up, one of the most important acts in Japanese pop history made their debut. In the middle of a freaking typhoon. On September 9th, a six-piece boy band, SMAP, took the stage at Seibu Yuenchi Amusement Park near Tokyo to perform their debut single, Can't Stop Loving, on the day of its release. It would have been a memorable moment in Japanese music.
From what I understand, they're like the other most famous male idol group, with Arashi basically, Arashi and SMAP.
History under any circumstances, but fate had yet another trick up its sleeve. Typhoon number 15, nicknamed Ivy, was making its way past eastern Japan that very day, absolutely drenching the venue.
We got plastic bag on the mic, that's something.
Performers and everyone in attendance. Sound equipment cut out, the rain was relentless. Nobody cared. SMAP played on, and their fans screamed right through the downpour. Because what's a little typhoon when you're witnessing greatness? But the debut single landed at number 2 on the Oricon charts, a slightly underwhelming start, all things considered, for what was supposed to be Japan's next big thing. But Masahiro Nakai, Takuya Kimura, Goro Inagaki, Tsuyoshi Kusanagi, Shingo Katori, and Katsuyuki Mori were not easily deterred. By 1994, they had their first #1 single, and from there, the trajectory was near vertical. 55 singles released over their career, every single one of them a top 10 hit, 33 #1s, 38.5 million records sold, their own massive weekly variety show, the best-selling single in Japan of the entire 21st century.
Wow.
I think you get it, until they're disbanded.
I should check them out properly then, that's what I know.
And in 2016, SMAP were absolutely
inescapable.
If you're talking 90s and 2000s Japanese pop culture, ain't no way you're not gonna be talking some SMAP. And it all started with 6 drenched teenagers performing in an amusement park in a typhoon in 1991. Oh, and SMAP, by the way, stands for Sports Music Assemble People, which, I mean, yeah, sure, why not? But while one typhoon marked the beginning of something wonderful, another one brought nothing but destruction. On September 27th, Typhoon Mireille, the 19th named storm of the season, made landfall near Sasebo City in Nagasaki Prefecture, packing winds of 175 kilometers per hour. It was the most powerful storm to strike Japan since 1961, and the damage it left behind was staggering. Mireille was ferocious in its reach. 41 of Japan's 47 prefectures sustained damage, over 7 million people lost power, and more than 670,000 homes were damaged or destroyed. But worst of all, between 62 and 68 people lost their lives, with over 1,000 more injured. By the time the storm crossed Hokkaido and left Japanese territory the following day, the financial toll had reached $10 billion, or roughly 22 billion in today's money, making Mireille one of the costliest disasters in Japanese history at the time.
Do they make disaster movie like the US? Because both Japan and the US, they're known for a ton of natural disaster, right? And so when I was young, I used to watch a lot on TV, especially they used to air a lot of them, the kind of Hollywood disaster movie. I don't know if you've ever seen a sort of Godzilla stuff, disaster movie from Japan. I wonder if there's any good one, be it fictional or unrelevant.
Agriculture alone took a $3 billion hit, with the apple industry bearing the brunt. Mireille knocked some 345,000 tons of apples off trees just days before harvest, earning the storm the nickname Ringo Taifu, or the Apple Typhoon.
Oof. I seen at the sea, nice. Did not expect a reference, so that's why I know. Probably the most underrated Kitano movie. It's not for everybody because most people would probably think it's very boring, and I can see why, but man, is it a great movie. I love slice of life, so yeah, love it, love it, love it. It's great. Okay, but I'm scared of Julie Saishi copyright. This OST is peak. This track especially I used to listen on repeat after I watched the movie.
On November 10th, the final Grand Sumo tournament of 1991 got underway in Fukuoka.
Is that Musashimaru maybe?
And with it, the beginning of one of the sport's greatest almost stories. The annual Kyushu Basho, held on Japan's southernmost main island, closed out what had already...
Okay, actually I'm even more afraid of him showing sumo footage. As a fan of sumo, like, the NHK will literally shoot you down for showing any footage.
Already been one of the most eventful years in sumo history. Back in May, the legendary Chiyo no Fuji, one of the greatest rikishi to ever set foot on the dohyo, had announced his retirement after losing to an 18-year-old Takanohana in a match that half of Japan tuned in to watch.
Things were different. Things were different. Yeah. Especially because Takanohana would become one of the great, right? But also, yeah, like, from what I remember, of what I've looked into, like, Chiyo no Fuji wasn't really losing that bad overall, like, but the way the Yokozuna were pressured at the time to retire the second they don't dominate anymore is very different. Like right now there's a whole controversy because we have two Yokozuna, Oshoryu and Onsato, and they are both not doing great recently, and since they become Yokozuna, because of injuries mainly, like when they are not injured they're doing great, but basically, you know, it's constant debate whether or not they should retire because again, they're not doing great the way they should for Yokozuna, and if this was back then, they would have definitely been forced to retire already. And there's a debate constantly between people who value like the traditional way to look at it, you know, they're not doing great, force them to retire, and people like me and maybe newer fan who are like, this is stupid. I mean, they're both like, you know, awesome. It would be so stupid to force them to retire. I don't know.
It was a passing of the torch moment, and throughout 1991, a new generation of talented wrestlers was jostling to fill the enormous void left behind. But arguably, the most interesting of them all was this guy. Meet Konishiki, 184 centimeters tall, 287 kilograms, that's
absolutely stupid amount of weight. Even today, the biggest guys are like max 200 kilo. 287 kilo is absolutely ridiculous, like genuinely ridiculous. How did this guy even function? I mean, even the guys that are like close to 200 kilos today, they're like usually not the best because it's just too much, right? The sweet spot is like 130 to 150 today. And we see it all depends on your build and how tall you are, but yeah. 287 kilo is ridiculous, and yet he was insanely successful with it.
633 pounds heavy, quite literally the biggest thing sumo had ever seen at the time. And he wasn't just big, he was talented, focused, and absolutely locked in. He entered that November Kyushu Basho and won the whole thing, his second career tournament title, and it quickly became clear that a push for Yokozuna, sumo's highest rank, was coming. You see, that November 1991 win was supposed to be the start of something historic. Konishiki won again in Osaka in March of 1992, posting a record of 75 wins and 15 losses across his last 6 tournaments. By any reasonable measure, the promotion should have been his, but for some reason the Japan Sumo Association disagreed. The response was essentially, let's wait one more tournament, and then all hell broke loose. Their refusal to promote the Hawaiian-born Konishiki sparked a firestorm of controversy, with allegations of racial discrimination casting a long, dark shadow.
I mean, the GSA, Japan Sumo Association, are definitely fucking racist. As a fan of sumo, even today, there's no question about that. They are often like some of the best wrestlers tend to be Mongolian, and they're often much harsher with like the Mongolian wrestler than the Japanese one, right? To this day. But frankly, they're just trash overall. The Sumo Association, like everybody hates them. It's not just racism, it's like overall they're always like saying stupid stuff, making dumb decisions, and yeah, they've always been trash, it seems.
Over the sport as a whole, unfortunately, over Konishki's own career, the controversy took its toll. He finished the following tournament at 9-6 and was never quite the same force ever again.
I mean, I can't imagine, like, already regular guys who are like 150, that takes a toll on you, but being 280, like, he probably just had so little time being able to move efficiently before his body started breaking down, right? So even if he became Yokozuna, I don't think he would have lasted long.
Motion never came. Konishiki remains one of the sport's greatest what-if stories, a man who had the size, the talent, and the records, but somehow never got the recognition he deserved. A what-if story that began and arguably peaked in Fukuoka in 1991. And for our final story of the year, another what-if. This time courtesy of Sega. On December 12th, they unleashed the Mega CD onto the Japanese market. And the crowd goes mild. Known in North America as the Sega CD, this was an add-on peripheral to the wildly popular Mega Drive/Genesis that allowed players to run games from shiny discs rather than cartridges. The concept wasn't new. NEC had already beaten everyone to the punch back in 1988 with a CD add-on for the PC Engine. Nintendo, meanwhile, had been quietly developing their own disk drive for the Super Famicom around the same time. A project that never quite saw the light of day. Well, kind of. But more on that in 1994. For now, December of 1991 belonged to Sega. And look, it wasn't quite the disaster it's sometimes made out to be. The Mega CD launched at 50,000 yen, sold reasonably well in...
I mean, it's really like that with all those new technology, right? I mean, a lot of the time, the first one to do it, they did all the work on, putting out this crazy technology, but it's too early because at this point, since it's new, it's still too expensive. And it's really going to work out better down the line when they figured it out, how to make it less expensive. That's how it is for all those new inventions, right? The gaming console, the CD, the PCs, the mobile phone, the TVs. It's like, yeah, I would say often it doesn't pay off to be the first one to take the risk to do it. Sometimes it does, but often not because it's just too expensive.
Japan initially, and the hardware was generally kind of impressive for the time. Full motion video, CD quality audio, the promise of a new era of gaming. Except, the Mega Drive was never as popular in Japan as it was overseas. Once the novelty wore off, sales fell quickly. The North American launch the following year didn't move the needle that much either, and by 1995, Sega had completely abandoned the thing. Just 2.2 million units sold worldwide, and the library of games ranged from the genuinely brilliant Sonic CD, Snatcher, Lunar, Road Adventure, to the gloriously terrible. I mean, what in the heck is a sewer shark? But here's the thing about Sega. Nobody fails quite like they do, and it could have been much worse. I mean, just imagine if they made an ugly, mushroom-shaped 32-bit add-on for the Mega Drive that... Oh yeah, that thing.
Is it ugly?
And there you have it, 1991.
Alright, good year though, a lot of interesting milestone and moments. Again, it's fascinating to watch these kind of videos. I mean, I love it. I love it. I'm sure there's like articles or Wikipedia page like this listing a ton of milestones, but I just don't find the same entertainment without it being in a video like this, right? So, yeah, that's what I've realized now. Like, I want to learn information like this, but I'm just not the type to be entertained when I go look at them in articles or Wikipedia, right? So that's why I might discontinue my Japan Prefecture series of stream. At first they were fun, but like the most recent one, I feel like I just don't retain the information as we're mostly just reading Wikipedia. So either I'll like switch ahead to them or discontinue them, yeah. Great video. I should recommend. Great video, love these things. I can't bloody write. Okay. 1992.
Next.
Sorry, I thought I heard some noise in the back, but no. I thought it was maybe on my PC, but no, I think it's somewhere else.
Stop 1992.
Let's pass the intro.
Nope, I did not make that up. On January the 8th, 41st President of the United States, George H.W. Bush, made a certain kind of diplomatic history when he vomited directly onto the Japanese Prime Minister Miyazawa Kiichi. Allow me to explain.
Damn.
The occasion was a formal banquet at Tokyo's prime ministerial residence, part of a 12-day trade-focused trip through Asia. It was a necessary piece of post-Cold War diplomacy, though that certainly didn't rule out a little bit of fun along the way. Earlier that same day, Bush Sr. had teamed up with US Ambassador Michael Armacost for a doubles match of tennis against Emperor Akihito and Crown Prince Naruhito. You know, Wii Sports style. The Japanese royals won, and perhaps defeat was simply too much to stomach for the Americans, because when the banquet arrived later that same evening, Papa Bush made his feelings about Japanese cuisine perfectly clear.
Oh boy.
In the second and third courses, he suddenly threw up into the Japanese Prime Minister's lap and fainted, in front of 135 diplomats. Awkward.
Like, how bad was it? He not only threw up, but he fainted on the guy. Like, was it really the food or?
To be fair, Bush handled the situation like a man and was actually totally fine. A mild stomach virus, as it turned out. By the following day, he was well enough to hold a joint conference with Emperor Akihito, dignity more or less intact.
I mean, this is the guy who got his dick sucked by his secretary in the Oval Office, right? Wait, was it Bush or Clinton? Okay, maybe I'm confusing them. I think it was Clinton.
But the vomiting incident itself, legendary. Americans had their fun with it in the days and weeks that followed naturally. In Japan, however, the story took on a life of its own. The term bushusuru,
yeah, definitely going.
Roughly translating to pulling a bush, entered the Japanese vernacular as the go-to expression for projectile vomiting.
No, I thought this would be some kind of like weird thing where it goes yari because, you know, he fell into his lap or something.
With or without a head of state in the vicinity. An awkward, entirely harmless, and utterly unforgettable moment. And one absolutely spectacular way to kick off 1992 in Japan. February then brought...
Embarrassing though. I've never puked on anyone, thankfully. But I get it, I mean, like, you know, when you feel really sick and you feel like you need to puke, you don't know when it's coming up. And a lot of the time you just don't have time to go to the bathroom or something. And sometimes it literally like comes out so fast that you don't even have time to like block your mouth or something. Puking isn't great, yeah. Yeah. A couple days ago this week I was really sick. You guys remember, maybe I canceled the stream. And I really felt like puking, but it wasn't coming out, so like I took a bucket and I was trying to make me puke by, you know, like pushing my hand in, but it just wasn't happening. It was really not a good time.
A good reason for the Japanese themselves to bushusuru, when on the 19th, the nation's economic planning agency had a confession to make. Japan had entered a recession. This had of course been knocking on Japan's door for the better part of 2 years. But now it was official, confirmed, on paper, in black and white, and even the most committed recession deniers could no longer look away. We've already seen how dramatically the Nikkei stock index had fallen at the turn of the decade, but the real gut punch of 1992 was the real estate market. The so-called Tochi Shinwa, or the myth of land, the deeply held belief that property values in Tokyo could simply never go down, had been well and truly shattered that year.
How would you ever believe that?
Banks had effectively stopped lending money for real estate speculation.
Again, I don't know any of this, real estate speculation, stock market, all that. I never looked into it. I don't have an understanding of it. And yet, you know, money is a human construct. It's all fake. It's all things that we created and put value on things ourselves. So why would you ever think that it's something that's unchangeable, right? I mean, even in the universe, we know that even the fucking sun has like a date limit. Like, come on, people.
With that faucet dry for over a year, the market had quietly collapsed underneath everyone's feet. Real estate prices in Tokyo and Osaka, for example, were down 15 to 20% in just a single year, and loans that had seemed perfectly reasonable at the height of the bubble were now starting to look really, really bad. The legendary corporate bonuses of the late 80s were slashed across the board. The job market tightened so severely that the period earned its own grim nickname, the Employment Ice Age. And so, February of 1992 became a turning point, the moment the entire country had to collectively face reality, the official end of the bubble era, and the beginning of what history would come to call the Lost Decade.
That's what it is, yes. Sailor Moon, no. Never watched. I need to give it a shot. As a classic. I don't know if I actually enjoy it.
嘘！何これ！私変身しちゃった！
The Lost Decade then opened with a string of tragedies beginning on April 25th, when 26-year-old rock artist Ozaki Yutaka was found naked, bruised, and unconscious roughly 500 meters from his own apartment in the early morning hours.
This one.
He was rushed to the hospital, where doctors determined his condition was potentially life-threatening. But against all medical advice, Ozaki insisted on returning home. Just a few hours later, at around 10 a.m., he had stopped breathing. He was pronounced dead 2 hours later at 12:06 p.m. Ozaki's passing hit Japan like a thunderbolt. He had made his debut at just 17 years old back in 1983 and almost immediately became the definitive voice of Japanese youth. A rebel with anti-establishment instincts, lyrics that cut right to the heart of what his generation was feeling, and a raw, electric talent that earned him a massive following almost overnight. By 1992, he had 3 #1 albums to his name and a personal life that had been unraveling for years, marked by illegal troubles, mental health struggles, and substance abuse. His death, while shocking, was perhaps not entirely surprising to those closest to him, but a tragedy was still a tragedy. More than 37,000 fans gathered at his memorial service 5 days later, and his most recently completed album Honetsu no Akashi was released posthumously on May the 10th. The story didn't end there though, because as details from the autopsy slowly emerged in the years that followed, rumors of potential foul play began to circulate. Rumors that have never been fully put to rest, even decades later. What is beyond dispute, however, is that Japan lost a genuine talent that day. The voice of a generation gone at 26 with so much still left to say. A similar tragedy was then narrowly avoided less than a month later when on May 22nd, filmmaker Itami Chuzo was attacked outside his home in Tokyo. At the time, Itami was arguably Japan's most beloved and celebrated director, a filmmaker known for warm, beautifully crafted, wonderfully eccentric movies that had just begun
another one of my list of I want to watch. I've heard of this one, yeah.
Attracting some serious attention in the West as well. His latest film, however, was something else entirely. Minbo, The Gentle Art of Japanese Extortion, which had premiered just 6 days prior, was a sharp, fearless comedy that took Japan's most feared collection of criminal organizations, the Yakuza, kicked them in the nuts, and laughed in their faces. Police had fully anticipated retaliation by the Yakuza, and they were right. While reaching into the backseat of his car outside his own home, Itami Chuzo was set upon by several masked men who slashed his face before fleeing in a black vehicle. A traumatic experience that could have ended way more tragically. But Itami, he was kind of a badass. So, while recovering in his hospital bed, he penned a letter to the public, openly denouncing the Yakuza, telling people not to fear them, despite what had happened. That, in essence, was also the central message of his most recent movie.
I mean, this is how you take the power away from, you know, criminals, right? Like, turn them into a joke.
So, the attack on Itamichuso became perhaps the most effective involuntary marketing stunt in Japanese film history. Meanwhile, became a massive critical and commercial success. The assailants, members of the Gotogumi, a Yamaguchi-gumi affiliate, were arrested. Itami, still wrapped in bandages, held a press conference alongside his wife and film's lead actress that became the stuff of legend. The 1992 attack demonstrated that he was not only a brilliant filmmaker, but also a man who genuinely lived by the convictions behind his own work. And if the rumors are to be believed, it would not be his last fateful encounter with organized crime. But for the time being, 1992's trilogy of tragedy concluded on May 27th with the passing of another towering figure of Japanese culture when Hasegawa Machiko died at the age of 72. And if that name doesn't ring a bell, it absolutely should. Making her professional debut in 1935 at just 15 years old, Hasegawa became the first professional female manga artist in history. A pioneer in the truest sense of the word, at a time when the industry she was entering had no real place for her just yet.
Well, you should list what she's doing and then I will know if I know her or not.
Her most celebrated work, the comic strip Sasai-san, ran from 1946 all the way up until her retirement in 1974, charming generation after generation of Japanese readers with its warm, quietly brilliant portrayal of everyday family life. But even that was only the beginning of its legacy. In 1969, Sasai-san made the leap to television as an anime.
Never checked it out.
This is still ongoing in the year of our Lord 2026, which makes it the longest running animated television series on Earth. Insane. Wow. Beyond the records though, what truly defines Hasegawa's legacy is her influence on the manga industry as a whole. By doing what she did and when she did it, she opened the doors for female manga artists that might otherwise have remained shut for decades. Works like Sailor Moon, which, as we just saw, made its anime debut just a few months prior to Hasegawa's passing, might never have existed in the form we know them without the foundation that Hasegawa helped lay. For that, and for so many other reasons, she stands as one of the great pioneers in Japanese entertainment history. Otsukare-sama deshita, Hasegawa-san.
Yeah, I keep saying that with so many stuff in this list, but definitely been wanting to check out Sasai-san eventually. Though, probably just a few episodes, right? I have no plan to watch 10,000 episodes. I don't know how many there is. It's probably more like 2,000, I assume. Yeah, it's a lot. But rest in peace, definitely legendary. As always, every time I think I know a lot about the industry, there's always people that have escaped me, right? The first major female mangaka, and I didn't know about her. I knew about Sasai-san, but since I eventually checked it out here, I didn't know about her personally.
Commercial time です。
You see his drink again. The guy in my soul. I like to say D, which is how we say it in French, not D, but D. The letter D.
In August, beverage giant Suntory changed the lives of overworked Japanese caffeine addicts forever with the launch of one of the most iconic canned drinks in the country's history, Boss Coffee. Now, the idea of putting coffee in a can and dropping it into a vending machine was hardly new, but 1992, the canned coffee market in Japan was already a battlefield. Asahi had their Joe coffee, and Suntory themselves had been in the game since 1987 with a product called West, which had been doing fine. Not great, just fine. Suntory had expected more, and so they did what any self-respecting corporation does when their first attempt underperforms. They went back to the drawing board, locked in, spent nearly 2 years in research, ran through close to 1,000 different prototypes, and came back swinging. The result was Boss Coffee, complete with that iconic pipe-smoking mascot nicknamed Bozu Ochi-san, who comes in with a vibe that just screams, "You're about to get caffeinated, boy."
I'd love to try it eventually, yeah.
Several different blends and flavors, but the target demographic was always crystal clear. Heavy coffee drinkers and demanding jobs, which, given that Japan was now firmly in the grip of an economic downturn and its workforce was more overworked and sleep-deprived than ever before, was an absolutely inspired piece of timing. Decades later, Boss remains as a fixture in Japan's omnipresent army of vending machines, brands that has somehow outlasted every trend, every competitor, and every shift in the industry. The final boss of canned coffee. Quite literally. Also in August on the 16th, a piece of high school baseball lore that Japan has never quite forgotten. Because what happened at Hanshin Koshien Stadium that day was less a sporting event, and more a full-scale national incident. A quick note for the uninitiated. High school baseball in Japan is not a niche thing. The annual National High School Baseball Championship is one of the most watched sporting events in the entire country. This is serious business. And in the summer of 1992, the tournament had one player that everyone had come to see. Matsui Hideki of Seiryo High School, nicknamed Godzilla. At just 17 years old, he was closing in on 60 career home runs in high school, a frankly absurd number, and had already been earmarked as a future star of the game. And so, of course, the crowd at Koshien that day was buzzing with anticipation going into Seiryo's second round match against Meitoku Gichuku High School.
Did he get struck out?
What followed was not quite what anyone had in mind though. Meitoku Gichuku's coach had watched Matsui play and reached a very simple conclusion. His team could not afford to let this kid swing that bat.
Oh, did they just walk in then? That's what happened. That would be ultra anticlimactic, but also like the most strategically sound way to do it. Like literally just don't give him a chance. Just walk in.
Not even once. And so he instructed his pitcher to intentionally walk Matsui every single time he stepped onto that plate. All 5 times. 20 pitches, not one of them anywhere near the strike zone. Technically legal? Yes. Spectacularly controversial? Double yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. But at the same time, you do what you gotta do to win, I mean, seriously. You don't fight Godzilla, you try to go past him.
By the 9th inning, with Matsui being walked for the 5th and final time, the stadium erupted. Megaphones, empty cans, and assorted debris rained onto the field. Threats were screamed at Meitoku's players, and the umpires were forced to stop the game to clear the pitch. And much to the crowd's dismay, Meitoku Gichuku's nasty little strategy totally worked. They won 3-2, and the match became a bona fide national scandal overnight, causing a massive debate about sportsmanship versus win-at-all-costs mentality. No matter which side you stand on, this is exactly the kind of drama that sports need every now and then.
I mean, in sumo, there's literally constantly the same drama. You know, in sumo, part of the... Like, there's a technique called enka that's legal. You know, every sumo match starts with, like, 2 people charging and crashing into each other, but there's something called enka, but one of the 2, rather than doing the initial charge, the tachiai, they will do an enka, which is like sidestepping, so the other guy just runs forward and falls down, and it's a legal technique, right? I mean, it's never been changed, but every time someone does it, it's controversial, especially like at the highest level. At the lowest level, people don't care as much, but at the high level, you know, there's constant debate, both in Japan and in the Western community. But again, the rules have never been changed, it's always been allowed. And obviously it's anticlimactic and it's annoying, but it's in the rules. So for me, it's like, even if I'm not happy if it's done to my team or something, right? Which the meme is like, NK is great if it's not done to someone I like. You know, it's the same here. Like, you know, you literally have an opponent so fucking strong, you have to like let him walk, you cannot let him eat you. It's fair enough. It's fair enough. You know, it also shows that maybe the other team wasn't great, right? They had like one mighty player, but the other rest of the team, you know, couldn't contend without that player, right? I don't know. I like it. I like it.
Matsui Hideki himself, well, he lost that battle, but he won the war. He lived up to the hype, became one of the greatest Japanese baseball players to ever do it, a New York Yankee in the 2000s, and an absolute legend of the sport. One of the most memorable moments of his illustrious career though, getting intentionally walked 5 times in a row in a Japanese high school baseball tournament in August of 1992. Walking 5 times then turned from being a sleazy little tactic to triggering a collective sigh of relief for students across Japan. Because on September the 12th, 1992, public schools in Japan began a gradual rollout of the 5-day school week.
Damn. I didn't even know that 6 days before that. That's crazy.
That's right. Up until that point, every student in a Japanese public school attended classes 6 days a week. Or 5.5 to be precise, since Saturday was at least mercifully short. Now, the initial September 1992 reform started somewhat modestly. Students would now get every second Saturday of the month off. Progress. Slow, deeply bureaucratic progress, but progress nonetheless. The 4th Saturday of each month then followed in 1995, and by 2002, most public schools across Japan had finally made the full switch to a 5-day week every week of every month. Why Personas still insists on sending me to school on Saturdays instead of just letting me romance Chihiro Fushimi more efficiently is a question for another time.
For gameplay.
What I do know is that Japanese students must have been absolutely thrilled going back to school after the summer of 1992, knowing that their Saturdays were at least partially their own now, especially considering that our 1992 Aniki Game of the Year was just around the corner.
I mean, 6 days a week for like it's normal school is crazy to me. I mean, maybe it's just because I hated school, so like just thinking about it makes me go insane, but I don't know. Like, you know, you only have 1 day of school a week. How do you even have time to do anything on that day? You know, if you choose to rest, I mean, you're done. You've wasted the only day you got to do anything. But also you would be dead tired from the week.
Game of the Year.
Dragon Quest V. I don't really know much of what happens in the early game. Is that the legendary one where the main character aged throughout the game? You're crucial.
その代わりチャンスはあるって言ってるでしょ。生き返るための試練を受けることができる。
And I think 6 years ago I reacted to the full show on another dead channel when I used to do anime reaction. Back in 2020 I think, yeah. I reacted to the full thing. Controversially probably, I am a big fan of everything from the beginning to the Dark Tournament. And I just felt everything after the Dark Tournament was kind of like losing my interest until the end. And the end is obviously famously rushed to the ending. But yeah, that's my take.
登場した途端に死んでしまったユウスケであるが、生き返るための試練を受けることになった。一体それはどんな試練なのか。
What's a year in Japan without a good old-fashioned political scandal? Well, October 21st has got you covered. That day, Kanemaru Shin, LDP member of the House of Representatives, former deputy prime minister, and a man who had never once been accused of keeping a low profile, resigned from his seat. And yes, of course, it was because of some massive controversy. You might remember Kanemaru from his 1990 cameo in this series. You know, when he flew to Pyongyang to shake Kim Il-sung's hand and allegedly wept in the presence of the eternal president. Well, 1992 turned out to be quite the year, even by his lofty standards.
Okay.
Back in March, he was shot at during a speech by a right-wing extremist who, with the accuracy of a stormtrooper, managed to miss every single bullet. Remarkable. But that was merely the warm-up act, because in August, the Asahi Shimbun broke a story revealing that transportation giant Sagawa Express had made illegal political donations totaling around 500 million yen, and that Kanemaru had helped himself to a very generous slice of that pie. The public reacted about as well as you would expect. The backlash was so fierce that Kanemaru, having already stepped down as LDP vice president months earlier, now resigned his parliamentary seat entirely, effectively drawing the curtain on what was one of the most turbulent political careers in modern Japanese history. But even that wasn't quite the end. In March of the following year, Kanemaru was arrested after investigators discovered that he had evaded more than 1 billion yen in taxes. The search of his home.
They really just can't help themselves, I mean, seriously. He's already probably, like, stupidly rich, I mean, beyond what you need, especially when you're fucking, like, 80 years old and you're gonna die soon. And yet, you know, you get to be, like, the guy running the country, and rather than, like, taking time to make things better for people, you still try to get more rich. Despite the fact that you're already, like, fucking rich to the max. It's so stupid.
Then turned up billions more in illegally accumulated assets, including gold bullion reportedly worth around 10 million yen. Which, by the way, some claim was an unmarked gift from a certain North Korean leader. The fall of Kanemaru Shin cost one man his career, but it also set in motion a political earthquake that would reshape the Japanese government in ways that nobody could quite predict just yet.
Yeah, from what I understand, this is where the other and current party basically comes in, and they haven't lost since. And it all stemmed from this incident, you know.
Speaking of unprecedented moments, 2 days later, on October 23rd, Emperor Akihito became the first Japanese emperor in history to set foot on Chinese soil. That's right.
Oh, yeah. I guess I never thought about it, but yeah, I guess so. From all the history video we watched, at no point did the emperor ever visit China. Yeah. Which I guess isn't that crazy, because for most of history, like, the ruler of a country isn't gonna go to another country, right? It's been more of a modern thing with, like, the ease of travel. And obviously, you know, with China's situation for most of the 20th century, right? There was no way he was gonna go. Well, any of them were gonna go, obviously.
24 emperors before him, and not a single one had ever made the trip. When you think about it, the reasons aren't that hard to understand. I mean, Japan and good old Chugoku have not, historically speaking, enjoyed the most loving of relationships, to put it very mildly.
I mean, if you go back a long time ago, sure. Early on, Japan was a big fan of China, right? A lot of the early way they run the country, they built places and all that was really inspired by China. Back in the era and then before that.
But that October 1992 visit was designed to be somewhat of a turning point in that relationship. At a state dinner hosted by the Chinese president, Akihito delivered a speech that directly addressed the Sino-Japanese wars and the suffering Japan had inflicted on the Chinese people. A speech that reportedly deviated from the draft prepared by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, with the emperor said to have personally revised it in his own words. That tracks. From almost the moment his father Hirohito passed away, Akihito had been quietly but consistently expressing remorse toward the Asian nations that suffered during Japan's imperial period, with China at the very top of that list. The 1992 visit by the emperor, which had actually been planned since the 1970s but repeatedly delayed, offered the most significant stage yet for that message. And it was not without controversy back home in Japan.
I'm sure.
The Tiananmen Square incident of 1989 still hung heavily over China's international relations. Many Japanese saw the imperial visit as handing Beijing a diplomatic lifeline it hadn't earned. In the long run, the trip did open the door to a decade of economic cooperation between the two nations, but it didn't even come close to resolving the deep-rooted tensions that have defined the relationship for centuries.
Of course.
What it did do unambiguously was make history. The first, and so far only, official visit of a Japanese emperor to China. That alone is remarkable. And hey, for what it's worth, Akihito did not bushusuru on any Chinese officials, which, as we now know, is not something you can always take for granted.
Yeah, I don't know if he would have went as well if he did.
コマーシャルタイムです。
You know what, I'll take the commercial time to take a quick break. Literally perfect timing. I'll go get something else to drink and go to the bathroom real quick, coming back before we continue. Alright, I'm back. Sorry for the wait. Okay, let's continue. Computer. Oh, typewriter.
November of '92 brought the first major media format launch of the decade. Ladies and gentlemen, the minidisc, a format that proves that, at least in Japan, size doesn't matter. You may know the minidisc primarily as one of history's most famous commercial flops.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't very used, though. Even though, for a while, a lot of DVD player, you know, you could put a DVD, but there was still like a kind of like little size for the mini disc, even though it never was used.
A format that somehow everybody has heard of and essentially nobody used. And look, you're not entirely wrong, because in most countries the minidisc is a footnote. But here's the thing, in Japan it was genuinely a big deal. Developed by Sony, yes, again with the Sony, I know, the minidisc arrived in late 1992 into a fascinating media landscape. CDs, co-developed by Sony themselves, were just becoming affordable to mainstream consumers and were looking increasingly like the future of high-fidelity home audio. Cassette tapes, meanwhile, were slowly starting to lose ground. Right there, in the gap between those two, Sony spotted an opportunity. A format that was ultra-portable, reliable, and most importantly, recordable. CDRs didn't exist yet in 1992 and were expected to take years to become affordable even after they eventually arrived. And the minidisc was supposed to be Sony's answer to that exact problem. It crashed and burned spectacularly in the US. In Europe, it found a modest audience. But in Japan it clicked. By 1997, Sony was shifting around 5 million of the little plastic encased discs per year in the domestic market alone. And the dream of creating a true successor to the cassette tape seemed, at least for a moment, within reach. Check this out. Japan even got minidisc kiosks, vending machines where you could compile a custom list of singles onto a single disc.
Oh, that's
Think iTunes, but physical, and in a konbini in the late 90s. Cost about 500 yen per song, which wasn't cheap, but let's not pretend like this isn't one of the coolest things you've ever seen. Unfortunately, MP3 players and then the actual iTunes came along shortly after and rendered the whole experiment moot. The minidisc was discontinued in 2013. But even in defeat, it remains a genuinely fascinating little format with a loyal fanbase that refuses to let it go entirely. And in Japan especially, it had a genuine moment in the sun that deserves to be remembered. Later that same month, Japan bore witness to perhaps the strangest story of the entire year. The disappearance of Fusen Oji-san,
I think or in some other video at some point we've heard about it.
The Balloon Man. Despite the nickname, Suzuki Yoshikazu was neither an aeronautical engineer nor a balloon salesman. He was a 52-year-old piano tuner from Tokyo who, by late 1992, was drowning in somewhere between 400 and 500 million yen of post-bubble debt, with around 20 creditors breathing down his neck. His solution? A world record stunt that would generate enough media sponsorship deals to wipe the slate clean. Genius. Now, what kind of world record did Suzuki have in mind, you ask? Well, the man had a thing for balloons, so earlier that year in April, he strapped a bunch of helium balloons to a regular lawn chair, took off, flew 24 kilometers at an altitude of 5,600 meters, and only came back down when he—
I don't like it one bit. Flying is scary already, but with balloons that can pop so easily, no thank you.
He crash landed on the roof of a private building nearly an hour later. Completely insane. And that was just a test flight, because 7 months later on the shores of Lake Biwa, Suzuki was back for the real thing. A solo crossing of the Pacific Ocean by balloon gondola. His trusty aircraft, a crudely assembled wooden basket attached to 26 massive helium balloons, nicknamed Fantasy Go. And at 4:20 p.m. on November 23rd,
no thank you. No thank you. Like, seriously. It's even scarier to me, you know? Like, it's scary over land. Do you hate skydiving or bungee jump? I don't hate it, but I wouldn't do it because I do have fear of heights, so like if you want to do it, it's fine, but not me. But yeah, like this is scary. Like if I was crossing like a country, you know, if I fall, at least I die instantly. But crossing the ocean, I mean, it depends how high it is, right? But I can't imagine like, you know, all the balloon pop and I fall into the ocean, literally in the middle of like the ocean, and that's it. I'm just in the middle of like thalassophobia now. I'd rather like fall and die than fall and end up in the water.
he cut the rope and set off for Nevada. It would be his last flight. An SOS signal was picked up from the Fantasy Go the following day. On the 25th, Suzuki was spotted floating at 2,500 meters near Miyagi Prefecture, alive, waving, and dropping items overboard to gain altitude. Since everything seemed fine so far, nobody came to rescue him. But after that, radio silence.
I mean, if he's dropping stuff, nothing seems fine, no?
Was the last time anyone ever saw or heard from the balloon man. His family filed a missing persons report and a search was launched, but to this day, nobody truly knows where he ended up. Some speculate he drifted as far as Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. He was officially declared dead in 1999. A story equal parts insane, funny, and tragic, and a perfect illustration of just how Japan's collapsing bubble economy pushed some people to their absolute limits. Rest easy, Balloon Man.
Yeah.
Finally, to close out yet another remarkable year, on December 3rd, Japan took a quiet but genuinely significant step into the digital future with the founding of Internet Initiative Japan, the country's very first commercial internet service provider. Now, the full importance of getting Japan online probably doesn't need that much explaining.
Disgusting.
Here's some context worth appreciating. This was still several months before the World Wide Web was officially made available to the general public. So basically, when it came to the internet, Japan wasn't late to the party. They helped set up the chairs. A team led by Suzuki Koichi saw what was coming and moved fast. By November of 1993, IIJ had the first commercial internet connectivity services up and running. And the year after that, Japan got its very first dial-up access. Over the span of less than 2 years,
a TV show from Idol told a lighter weight and did a bungee jump, and her head sunk in a lake for a moment. I don't like this.
He had laid the groundwork for ordinary Japanese citizens to go online. Not that most of them rushed to do so. Despite being one of the earliest countries to build the infrastructure, Japan's public internet adoption lagged behind the US and much of the West for several years.
Yeah, because Japan isn't as much into computers, so it would take a while longer for the internet to make sense.
A gap that wouldn't truly close until Japan became an early pioneer of mobile internet, which is a story for the late 90s. Stay tuned. But hey, none of that diminishes what IIJ built. The founding of Japan's first ISP in December of 1992 was the beginning of everything that followed. The plumbing that the modern Japanese internet runs through to this day. And let's be honest, the internet would be considerably less interesting without the Japanese on it. And that about
Okay, so that was 92. Very interesting year. Yeah. The bubble is fully dead and people have realized it, but also a lot of good stuff, yeah. I wonder if Japan can join the battle of AI now with US and China. I mean, do you want to? I think it's better not to. I don't know. So yeah, let's watch 1993. What happened in 1993?
Time is a genuinely crazy. 1993 in Japan did not get off to a particularly smooth start, because on January 15th, Japan's northernmost island of Hokkaido was struck by the first of 2 major earthquakes to hit the region that year. That day, the Kushido-oki earthquake, centered near the town of Ashiro in the island's eastern half, registered a magnitude of 7.6 and caused severe damage to farm roads, canals, and pipelines, leaving thousands of residents directly impacted, and some even without access.
Don't let Trump make Japan pay money to use AI. Yeah.
To running water. Then there was the fact that it struck in the middle of a Hokkaido winter, which only compounded the misery. Critical structures like dams were buried under the region's notoriously heavy snowfall, making proper inspection impossible until the thaw arrived. In total, 2 people were killed, nearly 1,000 more were injured. The Kushido-oki earthquake earned its place as a major disaster in every sense of the word. Then, in what was a cruel echo of those January events, a small island just off the western coast of Hokkaido would face something even worse. On July the 12th, Okushiri Island was struck by a magnitude 7.7 earthquake that triggered a devastating tsunami, killing more than 200 people. A haunting number that made 1993 one of the most catastrophic years in the modern history of Hokkaido. January...
Yeah. It's crazy.
However, had much better things in store. On the 25th, a major piece of history was made in the world of sumo when Hawaiian-born wrestler Akebono became...
Akebono, yes. I think earlier I was confusing Konishiki Akebono and Musashi Maru. Like, all 3 of them are like crazy big, over 200 kilo. I think that's why I confused them. And also, I wasn't watching back then.
The first non-Japanese person ever to reach the sport's highest rank of Yokozuna. And deservedly so, I might add. Born under the magnificent name Chadwick Hyle Rowan, Akebono was one of the most distinctive athletes sumo had ever seen. Standing over 2 meters tall and weighing in at a peak of 233 kilograms.
It's a great guy. 20 years of square of maximum. Le vol happen every 5 years. Oof, that's scary.
Was big even by sumo's already considerable standards. A man seemingly built for the sport, and yet he had only set foot in Japanese sumo wrestling 5 years earlier in 1988. But what followed was a world record speedrun of Japan's national sport. By 1990, he had reached the top division. From there, he developed one of the great rivalries of the era with the Hanada brothers, Wakanohana and Takanohana, both of whom would eventually reach Yokozuna themselves.
Yeah.
But 1993, that was entirely Akebono's moment. Back-to-back tournament wins in November of 1992 and January of 1993 sealed it.
Then with footage like this, you can really see how big he is. Like, he looks like a giant compared to everybody else.
In November of 1992 and January of 1993 sealed it. He was formally promoted to Yokozuna, going where no foreign-born wrestler had ever gone before.
The celebratory fish. If you're into sumo stuff, and someone wins a tournament, they get a fish like this, and they always post a picture with the fish. And in the sumo fan stuff, it's always like, you know, like a funny picture that people always use as a meme.
Some will argue, and not without reason, that his fellow foreigner Konishiki should have broken that barrier a year prior, but the Yokozuna Deliberation Council saw it differently.
Boo.
In their assessment, Akebono carried himself with the dignity and the humility that the rank demands, qualities that count every bit as much as wins and statistics. And promoting him did prove to be the right call. He remained active for 8 more years following his promotion, fighting through career-threatening injuries throughout, and went on to become one of the longer-serving Yokozuna in the sport's modern history. But beyond the titles and the tournament wins, Akebono's true legacy is the door he opened, laying the groundwork for non-Japanese wrestlers to be accepted at the very pinnacle of sumo, a shift that would later come to define a modern era dominated almost exclusively at the top level by Mongolian athletes. Massive in every sense of the word, in size, in achievement, and in influence, that is Akebono.
Yeah, today I think he has a YouTube channel and he does a lot of talking about sumo.
Then on February the 20th, gaming history was made with the release of the Fujitsu FM Town Smarty.
The what?
What, you've never heard of the FM Town Smarty? Clearly you've been living under a rock. In all seriousness though, yeah, this thing made exactly 0 dents in the gaming market, launching exclusively in Japan at a price of 98,000 yen or roughly $710 right in the middle of an economic...
That's almost like the price of the PS3 when it launched. That's crazy.
Collapse. It never really had a fighting chance, did it? But here's the thing I was only half kidding about. Gaming history genuinely was made with the FM Town Smarty, because this was the world's first 32-bit home video game console. While Nintendo and Sega were still flexing their measly 16-bit muscles, Fujitsu quietly said, "Hold my sake," and released a system packing not just 32 bits of processing power, but also a 3.5-inch floppy drive and a CD-ROM drive. Now the explanation actually makes a certain kind of sense. You see, the FM Town Smarty was simultaneously a sequel to and a consoleized version of Fujitsu's own FM Town's home computer from 1989. So essentially what you were buying here was a home computer in the shape of a games console, which in theory might justify the price somewhat as well. The market, however, did not care. The FM Town Smarty sold a grand total of 45,000 units before being discontinued in 1995. All despite the release of the FM Town Smarty 2 with a slightly friendlier price tag and, I kid you not, the FM Town's Car Marty, a version designed to be installed in automobiles, complete with a full built-in navigation system.
Okay.
Absolutely extraordinary.
And again, technology that's too ahead of its time. Because, you know, it's too expensive.
For the FM Town Smarty's game library, actually not half bad. Compatible with much of the existing FM Town software catalog, the Marty could run hundreds of titles, including solid arcade conversions like the legendary Splatterhouse and Afterburner. Bottom line, the FM Town Smarty didn't change gaming history forever, but it did beat every other 32-bit system to the market, and it remains perhaps my favorite gaming footnote of the entire 1990s.
Okay.
February then closed with the passing of a man who shaped Japanese post-war cinema like almost no one else.
I think.
Honda Ishido.
Oh.
Now, you may not immediately recognize the name, but you're absolutely, certainly 100% familiar with his work. Because all the way back in 1954, he directed and co-wrote the original Godzilla, the first entry in what is now the longest-running film franchise in history. But beyond launching that money printing machine, what Honda created here was one of the defining moments in Japanese film. A special effects landmark, the blueprint of the modern kaiju film, and most strikingly, a genuinely powerful metaphor for nuclear war hitting Japanese cinemas less than a decade after what happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah, that's
It struck a nerve, not just in Japan, but internationally. Nowhere more so than in America, helping Honda become one of the few Japanese filmmakers to achieve genuine influence on Western cinema. Quentin Tarantino, Tim Burton, Martin Scorsese, some of the greatest directors who ever lived, count Honda Ishido among their biggest inspirations. He continued making monster movies well into the 1970s before stepping away from the director's chair, but he wasn't finished just yet. In the 1980s and into his final years, he served as a close creative collaborator to none other than Kurosawa Akira.
Really?
You know, the man widely considered to be the greatest Japanese filmmaker of all time. And these two produced some all-time classics together. Kurosawa's 1980 samurai epic Kagemushi,
I did not know that he worked on this.
The Magical Dreams in 1990, just to name a few. Honda Ishido passed away on February 28, 1993 from respiratory failure, his memorial service bringing together some of the great figures of Japanese cinema, including Kurosawa himself and the legendary Mifune Toshiro, who reportedly embraced in tears during the funeral. A fitting farewell for what was one of the most important creative minds in the history of not just Japan.
Which is interesting because from what I've read at this point in the 90s, Kurosawa and Mifune weren't really close anymore. I think after the movie Redbeard, which was in the 70s, or maybe 80s, they kind of like had a falling out, I guess, and didn't really collaborate after that.
Japanese film, but film at large. April 1st then became a national holiday for the nation of streetwear. That day, 23-year-old from Gunma Prefecture named Nagao Tomoaki opened a clothing store in Harajuku, and in doing so, gave birth to a little brand called a bathing ape, or simply Bape. Now, you might know it as that brand selling preposterously expensive shirts that Pharrell Williams is inexplicably devoted to. Its roots go back to that Tokyo Spring Day in 1993 when Bape simply came out of nowhere. And I mean literally out of nowhere, because that was the name of the store that opened that day. As for that Nagao guy, he might be more familiar to my fellow rap enthusiasts under a different name entirely. Nigo. Member and in-house DJ of Japanese hip-hop supergroup Teriyaki Boys, and a good friend of the aforementioned Pharrell Williams and the Neptunes. But long before any of that, he was just a young guy fresh out of fashion college, working at Popeye Fashion magazine, with a dream of making and selling some genuinely cool clothing. So he borrowed 4 million yen from an acquaintance, moved into that same acquaintance's shop space in Harajuku, together with his good friend Takahashi Chun, launched Nowhere, with the ambition of becoming the go-to destination for a new, young generation of Japanese looking for a clean fit. The problem standing out among all the other Harajuku stores selling largely the same things. The solution, launching his very own exclusive in-house brand called a bathing ape, sold only at Nowhere. As for that weird brand name, which I know you're wondering about, it's an abbreviation of the phrase, a bathing ape in lukewarm water, referring to the act of lounging in a bath for so long that the water turns lukewarm, which in itself is a metaphor for the perceived laziness of the early 90s generation of young Japanese who, you know, happen to be the brand's exact target demographic. Mystery solved. And if you ask me, the shortened Bape does roll off the tongue quite nicely. Since 1993, Bape has grown into a genuine streetwear icon, particularly back in the 2000s when some of the biggest names in US hip-hop were proudly repping the brand in videos and at events. Does that mean I personally want to spend $125 on a split camo tee? Absolutely not. But Bape's lasting impact on global street fashion is undeniable. So April 1st, 1993 is absolutely one of the most important dates in Japanese fashion history.
I don't think I've ever seen the fashion, but I actually pay attention to fashion if that's not obvious. I'm kind of out of it. What the fuck? What? Is it an energy drink? Or is it medication to have a bigger ass? I don't get it.
And now, time to pick up the pace, because one day in May of 1993, Toyota woke up and decided to casually drop one of the most iconic cars in its entire history. Ladies and gentlemen, the Toyota Supra A80. The Mark IV, one of the single most recognizable automobiles to anyone born, let's say somewhere between 1980 and 2000, and for a very good reason. The A80 was the fourth generation of a Toyota nameplate whose lineage traces back to the late 1970s, itself rooted in the iconic Celica and 2000 GT models. Big shoes to fill, and it filled them spectacularly. At the heart of the Supra's legend is of course the 2JZ engine, which in stock form produced somewhere in the region of 200 to 300 horsepower, deliberately held back by that infamous Japanese car manufacturer's gentleman's agreement. You know, where they all decided to not go too wild on power output anymore, partly as a nod to road safety. But here's the thing. The 2JZ's real magic wasn't what the factory gave you, it was what the engine could handle. Because the 2JZ, more than almost any other engine ever produced, can absorb an extraordinary amount of abuse, modification, and tuning. Translation, people took it to absolutely insane places, some builds pushing north of 1,000 horsepower. Thank God that gentleman's agreement doesn't extend to the customers. So the Mark IV Supra became a tuner's dream machine, a car that in the right hands could be transformed into something almost incomprehensibly fast. But besides that, it was also just really beautiful. Exotic looking in a rounded, approachable kind of way, with those iconic rear taillights that I think a majority of us spent hours staring at in whatever racing game was our poison of choice. And that is precisely how the Supra transcended the world of car enthusiasts, through entertainment. From those aforementioned video games to Paul Walker's famous Orange Beast in The Fast and the Furious, the film I will stand behind is genuinely solid cinema, and I am willing to die on that hill. The Mark IV Supra became something that pretty much every millennial kid fantasized about owning at some point. Among a lineup from the world's largest car manufacturer, which turns out iconic vehicles on a near-regular basis, the Mark IV Supra somehow still manages to stand apart. Just one more Japanese automotive legend, born in the 1990s. Also born in the 90s, Japan's football revolution. On May 15th, the J-League, Japan's first ever professional football league, kicked off with its inaugural match.
We saw another video from Aniki about the story of the J-League and Japan's performance in the World Cup. And obviously, didn't work out this time either, yeah.
Up until that point, football in Japan was strictly amateur territory. The JSL had existed since 1965, but its clubs were not professional outfits. The early 90s, however, fueled by a potent mix of inspiring highs and humbling lows, was the moment Japan finally woke up and decided it was probably about time to take the world's most popular sport a bit more seriously. The first, most obvious step toward becoming a footballing powerhouse was professionalizing the game at home. That evening in May of 1993, the league launched in spectacular fashion. 10 clubs competed in that inaugural season, with 2 of them doing the honors of kicking the whole thing off at Tokyo's National Stadium. And results, Kawasaki Verdy 1, Yokohama Marinos 2. Despite that opening night loss, Kawasaki came back strong over the course of the season and won the entire thing, becoming the first ever J-League champions in history. But the real opening statement came just one day after the league's launch, when Kashima Antlers legendary Brazilian midfielder Zico, yes, that Zico, scored the J-League's first ever hat-trick. Brazilian magic on Japanese soil, what's not to love? Since that inaugural season, the J-League has only grown. More teams, more divisions, a proper footballing pyramid with the introduction of the J2 and J3 leagues. But more importantly, the league became the engine room of Japanese football's transformation into Asia's dominant force, producing talent that would take Japan to their first World Cup in 1998, to co-hosting and the round of 16 in 2002, and to first place in an iconic group of death at the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. More than 30 years on, the Japanese national team is now widely considered a genuine contender on the world stage. None of that happens without what was set in motion on the evening of May 15th, 1993. Go J-League!
Very nice.
From Japan's football boom to a whole different kind of boom. On June 28th, something extraordinary happened on the Japanese Oricon singles chart, when music label Being achieved what no label had done before, or has done since, when places 1 through 6 on the chart were all occupied by their own artists simultaneously. That's right, 6 consecutive chart positions, all from the same hit factory. The acts responsible: Tiboran, Bees, Sard, Zig, Ref, Sard and Wants, Zig again, and Tube.
Okay, so Bees obviously I know, Zard I know, and Tube I've checked out a song or two, yeah. Zig I don't know, but they seem important.
All rock bands, and all of them signed to Being. This moment was the peak of what is now known as the Being boom, a period of near-total chart domination in the early 90s that saw Being artists top the singles chart for 18 consecutive weeks between March and July of 1993, their music seemingly inescapable across TV programs, commercials, and every other corner of Japanese media. And that chart sweep of June 28th, that was the crescendo.
That is cool though.
A landmark moment not just in Japanese music history, but in the history of Japanese rock specifically, which as of 1993 had made one thing crystal clear. It was here to stay.
The thing I appreciate about Japan again, how much rock is still popular and respected, yeah. Secret of Mana. Wizard of it, but never played it. Oh, it's an action one. Suddenly my interest is off the moon. But about to the movie, that's a good one. That's a great one actually. Good stuff from Amoroshi. I know there's a new Patlabor anime coming up. I hope it's good. I really hope it's good. I fully catched up to the Patlabor franchise a year or two ago. Well, almost fully. I haven't watched the live action, but it's a lot of fun. I used to have this on DVD. Actually, I used to have the 3 movies on DVD. I had like a German version of DVD for the third Kaiju movie.
On August 9th, Japan's post-war politics changed forever.
Yeah.
On that day, Hosokawa Morihiro was sworn in as the 79th Prime Minister of Japan. And while a new PM is always a notable event, this one was genuinely historic. That day, Hosokawa, leader of the Japan New Party, became the first man to hold Japan's highest political office in the entire post-war era, without being a member of the Liberal Democratic Party. Or, well, not anymore. Technically, he had been an LDP man until 1992, when he decided to leave and found the new party, which then promptly won 35 seats in the July 1993 general election. Thus, the LDP lost its governing majority for the first time since 1955 and was replaced by an 8-party coalition with Hosokawa at the helm, which was unmistakably a sign of the times. The LDP had been lurching from one scandal to the next since the mid-80s, and now finally there were some real consequences. As for Hosokawa himself, his tenure was short but eventful. In less than a year in office, he made several unprecedented moves, including openly acknowledging Japan's role as an aggressor in World War II, which we all know too well is somehow still a controversial statement in this country. But besides that, he also pushed hard for genuine reforms, tackling bureaucratic inefficiency, overhauling election laws, cracking down on corporate political donations. Now, most of those ambitions ran straight into a wall, but the significance of his rise to power cannot be overstated. The LDP didn't recover its former dominance until 1996, making Hosokawa's victory one of the most seismic political shifts in modern Japanese history, and one that wouldn't be repeated until the late 2000s.
Okay.
2 days later, on August 11th, the devil was born in Tokyo. Or well, maybe not literally the devil, but certainly a child named Devil, which is close enough in my book. Now, the child in question had actually been born in late July, but August 11th was the day his parents walked into Akishima City Hall and submitted the birth registration. The name they had chosen for their bundle of joy, Akuma.
I guess it's still better than calling your child, Luffy or something, right? But yeah.
Devil. And wouldn't you know it, the City Hall staff accepted it.
They actually accepted it. Can you imagine, the bullying you're going to get about this?
Little Devil-chan became a proud Tokyo citizen. That, you might think, was that. It was not that. Word of the name spread from the City Hall staff to the authorities, then to the Tokyo Legal Affairs Bureau, whose chief made an executive decision. The name was inappropriate. He crossed out Akuma, wrote in name undecided, and informed the father accordingly. Months later, the story had reached Japan's biggest newspapers, a government cabinet meeting, and a nationwide public debate about naming rights that nobody quite saw coming.
It's a double thing, right? On one side, yeah, I don't think the government should be, it feels like the government like shouldn't have a right to tell you what you can or not name your child. And at the same time, I feel like if you're not gonna name your child like Hitler, Akuma, and stuff like this, you know, it's almost like you are setting up your child for like a bad life. And so I think there's a logic for the government doing something about it. You know?
The Sankei Shimbun even ran a reader poll in the matter, with the vast majority agreeing that naming your child Devil was, broadly speaking, kind of a bad idea. Not exactly a scorching hot take, but regardless, the boy kept the name Akuma for 3 more years until 1996, when his parents divorced and his mother, who, as it turned out, had only reluctantly agreed to the name in the first place, because of course it was the husband's idea, filed for a name change. The boy, now 3 years old, finally got himself a reportedly normal name and got on with his life. The controversy, however, left a lasting mark on Japanese naming law. In 2004, 488 kanji characters were formally banned from use in personal names. And so, the era of the Tokyo Devil was brief, but memorable. Goodbye, Akuma-chan. Hello, whatever your name is now.
Too many people do that, seriously. Like, I don't want to be too extreme, but whatever. Like, people who just had a kid and they're going to give it like a stupid ass name, like some crazy name like that, be it a bad word, name, like that and all that. I mean, to me, it's already like such a bad sign on how they're going to be as parents, right? It's already telling me these people are going to like definitely mistreat their kids.
And speaking of banned Akumas, on August 19th, the legendary Ryogoku Kokugikan Arena in Tokyo hosted what was, by any measure, the coolest event of 1993. The first official Street Fighter tournament ever held, the Street Fighter II Turbo Championship. The coolest event, Kokugikan Arena.
What's the Kokugikan, which is where often sumo event take place?
II Turbo Championship.
Street Fighter 2 Turbo Nihon Ichi Championship 93 in Kokugikan. Kazenkirok.
The voice.
7,000 competitors in 1993. Just let that number sink in for a moment. For context, EVO Japan 2026, part of the most prestigious fighting game tournament series on the planet, pulled in just over 7,000 entrants for Street Fighter 6. That means that Capcom's 1993 event was, until very recently, almost certainly the largest gaming tournament in history by sheer competitor count. Absolutely insane. The format was single elimination, played on the super fast.
Which maybe makes sense because like everybody back then might think they have a chance, so they'd be a lot more competitive. But these days there's a lot of people who, they're just gonna be want to be there as spectator, right? Because they don't even think there's a chance, so no point in participating.
Famicom version of hyper fighting. Yep, no arcade hardware, the entire thing played on pad. Diabolical. And yet, the level of skill on display here was genuinely impressive. The spacing, the footsies, remarkable stuff for 1993, a time when competitive gaming as a concept was barely even a thing yet. Then you also had a real-life Chun-Li on hand to cheer competitors on, which, not gonna lie, I still dream about at least twice a week as a man in his early 30s. The man who eventually got first place at the tournament was a certain Nakano Sagat, who made the entirely sensible decision of playing, Sagat, and walked away later that day with a genuinely spectacular trophy.
Okay.
The story of Nakano Sagat doesn't end in 1993. He went on to win the Super Turbo tournament at EVO 2019, and to this day, he carries his original SF2 cartridge around as a business card holder.
That's also
what a legend. But now, from 16-bit fighting to real fleshy fisticuffs, September 21st, one of the earliest forerunners of modern mixed martial arts made its debut at Tokyo Disney Resort. No, seriously. The event carried the amazing title, Yes, We Are Hybrid Wrestlers 1, and was put on by a newly founded promotion company.
It's the start of Punk Race, I see.
Called Pancras. Named after the ancient Greek combat sport Pancration, Pancras was the brainchild of
Looks like Suzuki Minoru, no?
Pancras was the brainchild of a group of former members of the Fujiwara-gumi pro wrestling promotion who had grown kind of disillusioned with their mentor's vision. He valued showmanship. They wanted to know what happened when a bunch of jacked up elite wrestlers actually fought each other for real. It wasn't an entirely new idea. Shuto had been exploring similar territory since the mid-1980s. Pancras built their own version. In September of 1993, they were ready to debut at the Tokyo Bay Ankai Hall, a sporting arena
Again, like 2 years before the UFC starts.
Situated within the grounds of Tokyo Disney Resorts. And it slapped. Literally. Competitors came in at
Basruten. Yeah, that's right. They couldn't punch. I mean, the rules were weird, right? It's still like early mixed martial arts competition. And Basruten was the king of the... He wouldn't really slap. He would use like palm strike. So hit with this part, you know, not ear, but ear, because ear is really hard. And he would knock out people with that.
Heat condition, spectators accustomed to the theatrical nature of traditional pro wrestling were genuinely shocked by the raw, unscripted combat they were witnessing. That shock, you know, as it tends to do, generated curiosity. Future events grew the promotions following steadily as MMA simultaneously began taking shape as a sport around the world. By 2000, Pancras had brought its rule set much closer in line with the broader MMA landscape. To this day, it remains as one of the oldest and most respected MMA organizations on the planet. Its most famous sibling is obviously the American UFC, but with the first Pancras event predating UFC 1 by just over a month, the vision behind
Okay, I was wrong. It's not 2 years, a month.
this thing deserves full recognition.
コマーシャルタイムで
This
す
side of MMA is really interesting. Always love learning about it.
新型清浄剤ワーキレイでエンジンきれいレーサー100も日赤ダッシュもワーキレイ日赤
And then you can still need to watch or read it. Probably read it since the anime from whatever it is. Far from finished and maybe a lot of filler.
桜木くんバスケット部に入るべきよ絶対
そうっすか
そうよ絶対よすごいわ
And to close out 1993 in the most
Ex-Japan.
dramatic way possible, Ex-Japan came home. Ex-Japan returned to 2 concerts at the Tokyo Dome on December 30th and 31st was not just the biggest musical event of that year in Japan, it was a statement. Just a little background for the uninitiated. Ex-Japan are widely considered the godfathers of visual kei. You know, basically Japan's own answer to glam rock with the hair and the stuff. But basically, X was enormously influential and enormously popular.
Yeah.
Millions of records sold out.
I mean, just insanely massive band in terms of like rock popularity in Japan, I would say.
Out tours, a devoted fan base. Then in 1992, the band set their sights on America. They replaced their bassist, relocated to LA, changed their name from X to Ex-Japan, and signed with an
Didn't really work out.
American label. And then, almost nothing. Their output ground to a halt. The only thing they released was their 4th album, Art of Life, in August of 1993.
Which is pretty great.
Consisting of just one single track,
Yeah, it's a 30-minute song.
nearly 30 minutes long, heavily orchestrated, and genuinely brilliant.
But obviously kind of like hard to market that as an album, right? Like an album that's one song and a song is 30 minutes, I mean, yeah, probably hard to market.
But one epic song does not a comeback make. Back in Japan, fans felt abandoned. Not a single concert on home soil since January of 1992, a US album that never quite materialized, and a general sense that Ex-Japan had bitten off more than they could chew and forgotten who got them there in the first place. But December of 1993
Happens
was
to many
the
artists.
answer to all of that. After nearly 2 years away, X-Japan returned to Japan for 2 nights at the Tokyo Dome to see out the year. And this New Year's Eve show, it was something special. As the clock crept toward midnight, the band launched into the full 30-minute Art of Life, playing it in its entirety as 1993 gave way to 1994. It was a perfect way of saying, we are back, and we mean it. And they were. New Year's Eve at the Tokyo Dome became a regular fixture of the band's annual calendar all the way until their disbandment in 1997. And
yeah, with their legendary last live at the Tokyo Dome, which is the one that got me into them. I think it was on YouTube, like 2012, something that I saw that live on YouTube, and it was one of the best live I've ever seen, just absolutely epic, right? And I watched it before even knowing the context, right? I mean, that it was kind of a return show, that the vocalist was in a cult, that there was fight between the band, that one of the members would die a year later, etc., right? And yeah, the show is incredible on its own, even without the story.
Tradition of major New Year's countdown concerts at the Dome has continued with different acts every single year since. One iconic band, one beautiful tradition, and the perfect way to fire us headfirst into 1994.
Next time though,
That's alright.
as we leave it at this one for today. But yeah, X-Japan are awesome. Definitely a big fan of their music. Yeah, but yeah, great stuff. I really enjoyed what we watched today again. This series was awesome. I wish, each episode was like, okay, let's not exaggerate, like 2 hours long, I guess. Obviously this is an overview of things, and I'm sure there's so many other like interesting things you could cover. But obviously, then it would take forever to cover a single, year. So I understand, but yeah, it's just like, it's a praise, right? The content is so good, I wish there was like so much more of it, is what I'm saying. But yeah, that was great. Though we'll probably not do another stream for a long time, maybe like 2 or 3 months, until there's enough video for another stream. But yeah, a lot of good stuff to learn about the early 90s. Maybe many subjects that we'll eventually check out in other videos that, go really in depth. We'll see. But for now, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Check out Aniki's channel and the videos. Like, subscribe, comment, channel Toloku. Yoroshiku onegaishimasu. I'll see you guys next time. ExoticBankai. See you.